We'd like to welcome everyone to our council meeting this evening. We need to excuse our mayor. He is out of town this evening and has asked to be excused. I failed to have time to ask him, would you, Councilman Clough will offer us an invocation. Councilman Granger, could I ask you to lead us in the pledge following that? Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this day which we have to be in a free nation. And we ask thee to bless us with an understanding of our heritage, those who have given their lives and everything that they have for our liberty and our freedoms. Help us to be respectful of our past and mindful of our future. Help us in this moment of time that we will take the decisions which are before us with charity and with love, and also with scrutiny of those things and their impacts that may happen to our city and to the people that live within it. Help us that we may continue to be mindful of those we represent, the power which we get from their support of us in this our nation. We pray for thy Spirit to give us more knowledge and understanding than that which we currently have, and help us to enact for the better good of our community. These things we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join us. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Clough and Councilwoman Granger, for your help with that. We'll look at our first item, and that's approval of our agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem, I motion that we approve the agenda as outlined.
Motion for approval by Councilman Clough.
Second.
Second by Councilman Belliston.
Ward, aye. Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. Item number 2, any announcements? Anyone have any announcements that need to be made tonight? Seeing none. Item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Anything to declare this evening? Not hearing any. We'll move to item 4 of our consent agenda. Approval of our minutes from city council meetings of 3/14/18 and 3/13/18.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I just ask, we talked about final plats possibly going under a consent agenda. It was, okay.
So be
okay.
futuristically.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good.
Then I move
thoughts.
approval of the consent agenda, including the minutes of 3/14/18 and 3/13/18.
Motion for approval by Councilwoman Granger.
Second.
Second by Councilman Clough.
Ward, aye. Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. Item 5, a plat amendment. Consideration to approve a plat amendment for Canyon Greens in Coral Canyon for a change of the lot line between parcel 4 and parcel 5 and clarify ownership and property use. Applicant Reed Scow, Cole West.
Thank you. As stated, the applicant's requesting approval of amended final plat for Canyon Greens Commercial Center. This particular amendment request is simply to eliminate and adjust one of the lot lines between parcels number 4 and 5, but more importantly, change the labeled ownership on parcel 5 to the Coral Canyon Master Residential Owners Association. Staff's reviewed the proposed amended final plat and finds it conforms to the zoning at this particular location, which is the Coral Canyon PCD. The subdivision also in compliance with the subdivision ordinance of the city. Staff recommended the amendment be recommended for approval of the Planning Commission. They held a public hearing on that request on March 21st of 2018. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the amended final plat for the Canyon Greens Commercial Center Phase B, 4th Amendment subdivision onto the City Council. That's based on the findings and subject to the conditions in your report, which are standard 5. I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have. Again, we're basically just talking about parcels 4 and 5 here. We needed to change you don't normally see ownerships platted on subdivisions, but this one does. And that name had to be changed over to this particular new entity there. So
Any questions from the council? Any discussion? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll make a motion that we approve the plat amendment for Coral, or for Canyon Greens and Coral Canyon for a change of lot line between parcel 4 and parcel 5.
Motion for approval by Councilman Belliston,
Second.
second Councilman Clough.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. That passes. Final plat, consideration to approve the final plat for Vida Soul Vacation Townhomes located at approximately 500 North, 1100 East. Applicant Anthony Sino.
Thank you. As stated again, final plat approval.
Excuse me,
Now,
just,
this-
have we changed the order of the agenda?
We didn't.
No.
We need to.
Yeah, probably. What have we done with the item that would normally be next?
This is at 6A.
This was a plat amendment 5A we did. That was 6A.
Oh, sorry, on my thing, it shows this CPFF ordinance,
Oh,
which would be official.
oh, the official, I was gonna say, I guess I didn't update my agenda. So I guess we have a, before we go to final, to 6A for our final plat, is it 5, what is it, 6 on your agenda? I didn't update my,
No, the agenda
just
is
need to-
updated.
No, the
It's
agenda's
just,
correct. I
the
mean,
agenda is correct.
This doesn't show that that's occurring. This does.
She just had something in her.
We just lost it.
I know,
Okay.
I updated it and it went
Okay,
away.
all right.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
forgive
so
me.
you hadn't updated, we had. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just, it was, yeah.
There was something in there.
It had been moved off and mine hadn't renewed. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
just drag it
So we
down.
are-
Mine was doing the same thing.
Got it.
Hey, in fairness, I saw what she was looking at. and I was trying to find it in mine too. So, hey, just
All right,
saying.
so we are on
I'm
to
Ghosts in the
6A.
Sorry
room.
for that disruption.
6A is a final plat. Consideration to approve the final plat for Vida Soul Vacation Townhomes
I'm glad.
located at approximately 500 North, 1100 East.
Thank you. We're here again for the final plat. This particular final plat subdivision is proposing 74 lots and the area coverage is 6.59 acres. The zoning at this location is the multifamily residential, or referred to as the R3, and it also has with it the short-term rental overlay zoning, which is referred to as vacation rentals. The preliminary plat was approved back on July 12th of 2017. Staff's reviewed the requested proposal, and the proposed final plat conforms to the approved preliminary plat. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their March 21st meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for the Vida Soul Vacation Townhome subdivision onto the City Council, and that's based upon the findings subject to the conditions. Now, this had 2 extra conditions that were actually brought up at the Planning Commission's meeting. Number 6 was in the general notes, a 10th note will be added to state, no recreational vehicles will be allowed in the special parking stalls dedicated to the ATV, UTV parking area. And I'll just kind of zoom in on one of those.
Can you tell me what the difference is?
These are for, they just don't want big recreational vehicles parking in here. This is basically for trailers that they might have.
Maybe it's our
Forerunners.
terminology because I consider those other things also to be recreational.
No motorhomes.
Okay.
Just no motorhomes.
Camp
Okay.
trailers.
And we could even put that if you feel, recreational
I
vehicles
would
in
s-
parentheses,
I would
motorhomes.
suggest the clarity might be
We
helpful because
can do
everything
that.
else is recreational too that you
Yeah, so we'll put no recreational
know.
vehicles, put it in some brackets, motorhomes. And that was one of the conditions that they added. The 7th was in the general notes, and 11th note will be added to state. This development is a short-term vacation rental subdivision approved for both permanent residency and vacation rental use. We're just going to try to get those on all of our short-term approved projects, just that they felt that it would be nice to have those on the plat with that, which is a wise idea. So we're going to try to catch those all the time with any of these projects. So.
And excuse me, I appreciate that we're doing that. I would just like to say that as long as we're giving either option, short-term rental or permanent residency, the money's going to be made with the short-term rental, and we're not going to be helping our affordable income situation. Otherwise, we would be. If it were one or the other, I think we would be assisting our affordable income issues. But when it's either, the money's going to be made in the short-term rentals. And that will up the price, I think, of what.
Oh, we know that it does.
Yeah, that's my
So-
point, is it's going to
Yeah.
cost more to buy these units because they're short-term than it would if they were just residential.
Good point.
But with that, I'm done with my report. I'll be glad to answer any other questions the council might
Any other
have on this
questions from
final
council
plat.
concerning this final plat?
So on the ATV parking, that would be for trailers of ATVs. Is that correct? Or are we?
Correct, or just other toys. They just won't be for a big motor home to be able to park in there. Now, if somebody had a boat, they could back the boat in, unhook it from their vehicle, then park in the regular parking areas that are associated with the homes. We just have had in the past problems with them bringing toys pulled behind their vehicles and then no place to put them. So this,
Was the concern with that the fact somebody would pull a camp trailer or a motorhome in there and be, so other family members would be staying in that and it would spill?
that was part of it.
Spill
And
the
the other part
process.
was just the size of some of the recreational
Additional
vehicles,
vehicles there.
motorhomes.
The effect of those adjoining properties next to them.
Correct.
But the way that the condition states on there is absolutely none, even if it was a small teardrop trailer, or are we?
Well, that's why we put it under the, the motor home versus a bumper pull is what they call, isn't that what they call those trailers behind? I've never owned one, but I think they call them bumper pull trailers.
Well,
I doubt they're going to be
from the
bringing one
bumper,
of
if
those.
It's a fifth wheel, then it's a fifth wheel.
It's a fifth wheel. So what we're trying to do is just have, if they bring their four-wheelers with them, if they bring a boat with them, those kind of things is what we're seeing. We
Maybe-
generally don't see a lot of motorhomes at these facilities
You know,
anyway.
maybe the issue isn't the motorhome. Maybe the issue is the occupation of the motorhome. If that's the issue, well, what I'd say is there will be no recreation vehicles which will be inhabited during the stay, because that seems to be the issue, because we're going to run into a whole lot of, well, what if they live in that little teardrop thing while they're there? Or what if they, what we're trying to say is, I know the developers just don't want people using the parking stalls to reduce the amount of rental that's going on. I understand that. That makes sense to me. But I think it's the living in the vehicle that's the issue, because I don't know if we can cover all the types of.
Yeah, wasn't this a concern of the planning commission?
It was a
It wasn't
concern of the
driven
planning
by the
commission.
developer, it was driven by
No.
the planning commission.
This was by the planning
And
commission.
what was their concern?
Just of having the size of
Just
some
the
of the
si- it was more
recreational
of a
vehicles.
size
Yeah, the motor
issue.
homes that would be parked in there. They're fine with a toy, because this is what we've made these people put these extra parking places in because of the problem we had of people parking their boats at our Razor Ridge fishing pond and leaving them there while they went and did other things, but because they couldn't put them in Coral Canyon because the CCR said no toys like that. So they park in our parking lot with those things. And so we were just trying to fix those problems. And so we've been, as a city, planning commission and city council, making them do some established parking for those things. Because of the design and the layout of this one, they just, didn't want to make sure they did not, that was a double negative. They did not want to have bigger, 25 to 30 some odd foot, 40-foot motor home.
So two issues, living in them and lane.
And it probably come to that, and just the moving of that big vehicle, trying to park it in there where a boat at least is on a hinge, and you can get those in there.
Lengthwise, I don't think it's going to be an issue because you can pretty much fit anything you need to in that.
Correct.
See, I don't see a problem with leaving that note off. And because it's just, that's what people know it's for, is for your large vehicles. And whether it's a bumper pull trailer or a fifth wheel RV or a diesel pusher RV or a trailer of four-wheelers, that's why we have those stalls, is because we don't have normal long
Room.
stalls.
Yeah, we don't have big enough stalls for those kind of things. So
It seems to me that it's kind of a unneeded.
Would
note
you,
because
would
it's
you
gonna be
want to
double.
note in there that just nothing that is inhabited? If the concern is of disrupting neighbors, you've got a group of you and it's like, hey, well, we can put a motorhome in there and half of you can stay in that and the other half will stay in the house. Then all of a sudden you've impacted, so I don't know whether that's a concern that you'd want to note to say, we don't care if you put a trailer in there, you just can't inhabit it. Well, it's not probably in your short-term rentals, I'll bet you don't.
I don't know that it's necessary because I don't want to get into a policing issue.
Well,
I mean, I
that's-
think that there's only 5 or 6 stalls in there. I think the neighborhood's going to regulate themselves. If you had somebody living in there and not living in a neighborhood rental, I would think the neighbors get pretty torqued off because they're losing that rental income, which is why they bought the properties.
Do we have an ordinance, Drew? Do you know?
There probably is, as I recall, it's not in the zoning ordinance, or else I would know it just like that. But I think it's in our other ordinances in chapter 4 of certain things, and I'm pretty sure we can't stay in you can't, unless you have by a conditional use permit. Right, and the only time we do that is if someone pulled a building permit. Sometimes we'll let them live in their motorhome for a 6-month period while they're building a home. But that's other than that, they're really not allowed to stay overnight in a
So
recreational
if that's the
type.
case, the council have a desire just to drop that note?
Sure.
Is that your?
I'd be happy to drop it.
And the final plat does say this is for ATV, UTV parking, and we'll let the property management
Just
take care.
leave it
If we
like
have a
that.
problem, we come
them
back and maybe
enforce it
address
their
it at that time. So.
Any other discussion from council?
Only the thought that under those conditions, maybe we want to repeat that portion of the ordinance that says you can't do that because these are the ones likely to do that. Well, that's not true. It happens in my neighborhood all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that we've added the last general note because we're trying to keep them informed about what the
Correct.
situation is. And, if repeating that in the ordinance is helpful, maybe we could repeat it, not that it's necessary if we have it elsewhere in our ordinance.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll look for a motion from council.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll make a motion that we approve the final plat for Vita Salts Vacation Townhomes located approximately 500 North, 1100 East with removing that final condition.
The one with just the,
Number 10, I think it is, right?
It would have been note 10.
note 10.
Now
So
we'll just
removing
make
note 10.
note 11 will become note 10.
Okay. So the motion is for approval with that, with those conditions realigned. Councilman Belliston? Need a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Clough.
Ward name.
Aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. Item 6B, consideration to approve the final plat for Rusted Hills, Phase 6, located approximately Bronco Drive and Kings Court Lane. Applicant Ray DeWitt.
This is the phase 6 of Rusted Hills as stated. This particular phase of the subdivision is proposing 8 lots. The area coverage is 3.97 acres. The zoning at this particular location is a single-family residential, 15,000 square foot, or the R115 zoning designation. This preliminary plat was approved back on June 11, 2014. Staff's reviewed the requested proposal and finds the proposed final plat conforming to the approved preliminary plat. The Planning Commission reviewed this request last week at their March 21st meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for the Rusted Hills Phase 6 subdivision. On to you, the City Council, and that's based on the findings subject to the conditions in your report, and they are the standard 5 conditions. Be glad to answer any questions council might have.
Council, any questions or concerns with this final plat?
Will you take us there on a satellite just so I make sure I got all my property straight?
It's a lot of properties out there. We'll zoom in on this one.
This is just behind the Staley Farm.
While you're doing that, well, yeah, it's right there, but while you're doing that, I went and met Mr. DeWitt a couple of weeks ago, and he had some questions on
Retaining walls.
and things like that. And
Yeah.
I know that's in process. He's fine if, I assume they're just gonna try and record and then. on to
Yeah, I
it.
haven't heard anything since. I know they went out and met with him. Our public works inspectors went out, met with him. The date they picked, I was already tied up. I couldn't go out, or else I'd report on how that meeting went. But we have a standard or an ordinance in the city that anything over 3 feet in a separation has to have a retaining wall.
Sure.
And we've had many discussions, and I think Councilman Turk was in many of those. One of the few back in the year that we adopted that and the need. So anyway, to help you, if you can see, if you see where Kings Court Road is, This is the road as you see on your plat that would drive straight down and then tie into Bronco Drive. So there'd be 2 lots on each side of Kings Court and then the 4 on the opposite, the south side of Bronco Drive.
Any other questions or discussions? Now I'll look for a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, if that would be okay, I'm gonna give a shot on this again. Get this wrong. I'm not good at these motions yet. I
Oh,
apologize.
you are too.
All right. Well, I make a motion that we approve the final plat for Russet Hills Phase 6, located approximately Bronco Drive and Kings Court Lane.
Motion for approval by Councilman Clough, which was perfectly done.
Second.
Second by Councilman Ward.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellis and I.
Turek, aye. Thank you. Item 7, amendment to a preliminary plat conditions. 7A, continuation of the consideration to amend or change a condition to the preliminary plat for Shooting Star subdivision regarding a geotechnical representative must be on site continuously during all grading and trenching operations as required in the geotechnical report. Applicant was GTS. So this was one that's being continued that was heard previously, council.
So if you just want to turn to my report, again, this was tabled a month ago, and we're able to get them on the last council meeting. And so here's the letter that they brought in that it has been given to staff. And so it is at the bottom of my report in case you were looking for it. And then I think that's about all I've got for this. Unless you have any questions, I'll invite the applicant up to finish that discussion that was started 4 weeks ago.
Any questions from this council to the applicant? Any discussion?
I'd like to hear what Councilman Bellison has to say regarding the 25%, if that's,
25% is too step. My attitude, especially up there, and I expressed my concerns earlier. I can understand not having somebody on site when they're doing curb gutter sidewalk, placing that. I can understand not having somebody on site as they're digging in utilities. I can understand not having somebody on site if they're doing some final trimming. But mass grading, even if it's under 25%, I think you need to have somebody there. And any backfilling of utilities and compaction of utilities, they need to have somebody there. Anything where you'd be bringing up fill and filling in those areas, I think somebody needs to be there.
Can you explain for my benefit the purpose of having somebody on site for the utilities?
Well, because a lot of those utilities are 6, 7, 8, 10, sometimes 15, 20 feet down. And so when you're digging it, it's not a big deal. And as you're laying it, it's not a big deal. But that's a lot of dirt that you're bringing back in. And as far as the city's concerned, that's where we have settlement. You know, if somebody's house settles, I mean, certainly we don't want their house to settle, but we also have liabilities underneath the roadways. Once we say that, hey, we're good with it, that's our road, then we get to go back and mitigate those issues. So,
And I mentioned, we've had that very incident on Camino Real. Matter of fact, you can drive down there right now. Mike's repaired a couple of them already, but we still got several of them that are just, and we picked that up.
because of the way the soils report was written before, it kind of poisoned the well, so to speak, because I don't want to have ammunition for anybody down the road to say, well, my house settled and it's because of this, and it's all public record. I mean, I get where you're going, and I can understand those areas where it doesn't make sense to have somebody sitting around there, but I also am not.
What do we do on other sites that we have deep utilities? Don't we just test by lifts as they bring them up?
Sure.
Like, I mean, so we don't have to have anybody on site all the time. I mean, they come in and test a lift and they bring the next lift in and compact it and they retest the lift. And
Yeah, let me explain. This is Chris Volkson with Geotechnical Testing Services. On utilities, the city requirement is for a compaction test on each lift, a minimum of 200 feet. A typical trenching crew will place 150 to 200 feet of sewer line. Sewers are usually the problem because they're the deepest a day. So we're out there once to twice a day to check compaction on a sewer trench. And again, there's no reason to be out there full-time during that operation. As an example, talking to what you were talking about, Troy, we've been out there full-time pretty much since the last city council meeting. I had a couple times where I had a guy late or he was out for just a little bit. Yes, this past week, I've had them sit out there all day, like we've had to do. And there's some areas where they've placed maybe 12 inches of fill. And that's been it all day long. I don't feel it's right for the developer to have to pay for that. And yes, as I said, I had wrote that in my report, but as I explained in this letter, I meant we wanted to have the discretion on where we wanted to put a guy full time. The area they're working now, yes, he needed to be there full time because they were placing a lot of fill really quick. I explained it here. I don't feel if they're putting a foot of fill down in over a 3-hour period of time, we don't need to be there because we can be there and test. We can come back 3 hours later, make observations on what we need to observe, and take more compaction tests. I won't let a contractor place more than 12 inches of fill without having a test on it. That's, that's what we want to have done. But, this morning I called my technician. I said, how are things going out there? He said, well, their water truck broke down. They're really not working. And I said, okay, well, maybe we'll get you off that job for the day. And he says, well, no, they're going to just like trim a little bit and do a little bit here. And I said, okay, well, you're there. You got to be there. If we start benching operations where we can observe the bench, because benching is something that's very critical. That was one area we were concerned about in our report. If they can cut the bench in, we can observe the bottom, we can observe the sides, and they're not going to fill it up before we can get there. I don't have to have a guy there. If they're going so fast where they're cutting the benches in and filling at the same time, then I need to have somebody there full time. When we get into some of these slopes that are greater than 25% and right up to 25% is steep, I'm going to make a call. If it's at 20% or 5%, and they're going too fast, I'm going to put somebody there full time. It's just having them there when they're putting a foot of fill down in an area the size of a football field all day long. That seems to be a waste of my manpower and of the developers'
I understand
money.
where you're going with that. And I understand fully where you're coming from. However, it was part of the public discussion with the Planning Commission. It was a condition with the City Council. It was part of the soils report. It's been discussed multiple times in the past. And, the second somebody has a problem because we pulled back from that, it's a real problem.
But it was a recommendation of Hillside Committee to have something just like this. These are basically off of the Hillside Committee's recommendations.
At this point, Hillside, I don't care what Hillside Committee said. I'll be honest with you. I mean, this is what is part of the public record in the past. It's part of the conditions that were placed on the property. If we're going to scale back those requirements.
And I wasn't here for the first portion of this. I guess my interest is why would it be as part of your initial report to be there, and then now we're pulling back from that initial report?
There were certain parts of this. When we wrote this report, we were under the impression that the whole subdivision was going to be graded at one time. 450 lots, steep hillsides on the south side,
Correct.
Deep washes. We're going to be moving a lot of material in a short period of time. I wanted to be able to direct when I had to have somebody on site. So sometimes a contractor will tell
But
you.
didn't you write in there that you would have him there all times, not that at your direction or
And
directed, just that I will.
that's
It's
why
important
this,
to have a geotech there at all times is the way that report states.
right. And that was a typo. I should have said, because it says I have to be there all the time during road base placement and sewer trench. And we've never been on a job where we've had somebody there full-time.
No, and it doesn't make sense to me to have that. That's why
Right.
I wondered why the report
It-
would say that when
There was,
most common sense says
there
you're
were
right.
2 bullet items in our report. 1 or 2, I can't remember exactly how they are, where I should have said during this part of the operation, and I should have been more specific and said, if this is during
Yeah,
these
that's- certainly would've
operations.
been nicer. I mean, at
It
this
said
point.
in the report, must be on site continuously during grading and trenching operations. So, there's, if we were talking about flat ground in the fields, it's
Yeah.
not an issue, but. I
It
mean,
is
you've
now.
got-
That's what we're in. We're in flat ground. We've been in,
You're in 20, 30, 40-foot fills.
not anymore.
Well, you're not
Well,
even
no,
because they're done, but
we've almost filled those fills up, almost.
I understand.
And they're big fills.
You're asking for 25%, and 25% is a significant slope.
What if you're more comfortable with knocking that down to 20%?
How about 2%?
That's everywhere in the entire city. It's 2%
I
or
understand.
more.
My concern isn't whether or not you have a guy that's on site and if the developer has to pay for it. My concern is down the road, we've got 120 acres, 350 residences up there?
About
About
450,
400.
somewhere in
I
there.
care about those 400 people.
Well, So,
what their issues
so do I.
And I'm not saying you don't.
Right.
But you understand, there's a public record now that says, must be on site, must be on site, must be on site, must be on site. Now, we don't want to have somebody on site, or it needs to be at our discretion. The first guy that his house settles, who are they suing?
Me.
And I can guarantee you the city's going to get a notice of lawsuit too. Guarantee it.
So are we saying, I mean,
I'm
Do you want-
willing to concede. This is me personally. You got 5 people here. I'm willing to concede when you're digging utilities. I'm willing to concede that. I'm willing to concede when you're doing, final cut on a pad after it's been, all the mass grading's been done. I'm willing to concede that. I'm willing to concede when you're placing the 6 inches of road base for curb gutter, sidewalk, whatnot. I'm willing to concede that. But if you're backfilling utilities or if you're doing mass grading, I'm not willing to concede it.
so all utilities?
As
Yeah,
you're
see,
backfilling, yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't see a need for that. For the mere fact, we have an ordinance that covers that. I mean, we have I don't know why we would treat him any different doing utilities than we do every other contractor in town doing utilities.
Because
You got, I mean,
it's whether or not the city wants to assume the liability, because we have had settlement before, and his report said to have somebody there.
well, and that's, I guess, I look at the utilities as a whole and say utilities are utilities, and we have an ordinance that covers how we do utilities.
Well, and
It's
that's
my
fine.
own two
I'm
bits,
looking at
'cause-
it from,
Because you take this and say, well, we require everybody else to do this, but we're going to require you to do that.
no,
Well,
we
utility-
required him to do that based on the report, the soils
Right,
report
but-
that came out.
Yeah.
The
But
public hearings that
I
were
guess I
done,
just don't
the
see-
Planning commission
With
recommendations.
the
to
grading
council.
portion of it, I can see the prudence. I can see the understanding of why you would do it with the grading. With utilities, there's a set process with utilities. I just don't see it being as much the issue that you're discussing. My personal opinion.
So even if I say that should not have been written that way,
It was bold, capitalized in the report, as I recall, was it not?
I believe it was because
Okay.
again, and
So if it's capitalized in the report and there was multiple discussions on it as it came through the process. I mean,
yeah, I remember
we
that.
had the
I remember
discussion. So it's not like, whoops, I didn't mean to. We had pretty direct conversations about it and made sure it was in the minutes and in the motion.
Yes.
So, I mean,
I guess
for
I'm-
me, it's whoops, I screwed up. It's a little bit late.
Yeah. And I'm looking at, going out on site and looking at it and I'm going, there is no, when we first started that, yes, there were there were fills, there were things. And now we're getting into these areas and I'm like, there's no reason for us to be here.
It
And-
might be ridiculous in your opinion. It's not ridiculous in mine. So, I mean, the developer, hey, we're happy to have somebody out on site, but we want to do this. We understand there's massive cuts and fills when we know that we've had a lot of settlement problems all along that bench everywhere where we have massive cut and fills.
There's been some really bad
There's
fills
been
put
some
in.
real issues.
Yes.
My addition with what you're saying, Councilman Belliston, is that if you were willing at the beginning of this, viewing the concept, saying we need to be here from beginning to end, this is definitely something we need to do, then finish it. You're almost at that finishing point. It's just that kind of final steps. We appreciate your oversight on it. I don't see a reason to back off if that was the vision from the beginning, knowing that you would be there. I'm glad it's lessened in the liability and it looks like it's doing great, but I think it's fine to continue with the conditions as they are. It's one of those things that I think was discussed very well. I echo with Councilman Belliston, is that it wasn't accidental in how it was laid out. Though it may not have a need at this time, it's a need of integrity with the agreement we have in place to keep things safe and for the better interests of the people that will live in there in the future.
Okay, so where do I, if
I don't have a problem with a motion that suggests that if you're digging utilities or doing a final cut after mass grading or doing the 6 inches for curb and gutter, that those are exceptions. You know, I do sense that you need some relief with your staff and where they're available and to feel that they're adequately engaged. But we're worried about some of that land. We're going to be worried about other developments that are going to be discussed. We've had some bad experiences. I haven't been on the council long enough to have all those bad experiences, but I have friends who live in Santa Clara and some friend whose utility, a brand new home, it's 2 months old, utility wasn't adequately compacted and her home is moving. You know, those things happen, and we've had bad experiences with Blue Clay, and we need to be cautious. And I think that's why you wrote the report, and it's why we accepted that report. But you don't need it for those other 3 things. I don't think if that gives you some relief,
Okay.
I would make a motion to suggest we give relief in those 3 areas.
Okay, there is a motion on the table to keep the grading or the geotechnical report in place as is, with relief being for
6 inches for curb and gutter,
Curb, gutter,
digging utilities, final cut after
utilities,
mass grading.
and okay, is there a second?
We'll
We'll get a second, then we'll take discussion.
Just one more time on the list. The curb gutter.
Curb and gutter, utilities,
Digging utilities and doing the final cut after
The
the
final
mass
cut
grading is
after.
done.
Digging utilities, I'm not comfortable with
well, you can vote.
filling plates. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
see, I
if it's
am,
digging
so.
Or all the utilities.
So, yeah, digging, you're not compacting anything, you're digging. So to me, it's a utility field trench. So we have a motion. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. So is there discussion to the motion? There's discussion on the utilities portion of it. As the motion stands, you're fine with the city ordinance holding up in place of
Yes.
the, okay. So that is the motion that's on the table.
So once again, it's for curb and digging utilities.
6 inches of fill for
It's,
curb and
yeah,
gutter.
it's installation of utilities. So it's all utilities, the curb and gutter, placement, and the final grade after the mass grade. So just the lot, final grade preparations. So that's the motion.
Can I ask staff to address that area there and give us an idea if our current ordinances are sufficient for that area?
Mike Shaw, Public Works Director. We've had issues with utility and settlement around utilities, but mainly it's been around catch basins for storm drain, sewer manholes, and valve boxes. So around something that's protruding up through the road, that's where we've had our majority of problems with settlement. We have had them with lines, but it's mainly been around those utilities where it's got some protruding up through the asphalt.
Yeah. And Councilman, are you asking these 3 issues? Staff's thoughts are.
So compaction on utilities, yes, I think our standards pretty much covers that. We're looking at actually boning up our standards for the compaction around the different, boxes, manholes, valve boxes. We're looking at trying to bring those up. I don't have any issue with the placement of road base for the roadways or the curb gutter and sidewalk, and cutting a foot off of the grade of lots is an issue to us.
Or the digging of the utilities.
Digging utilities, there's no compaction.
Just saying.
Yeah, so take me through that. With current local ordinance and what we're granting here, what would be required as far as testing on burying utilities?
I don't know the exact number. It's, yeah, something like every 200 feet and every 18-inch lifts or something like that. I'd have to pull out our standards. I don't
And
remember.
when you
But
say one, you mean one visit by
The geotech has to actually do a compaction test in those locations
Thank you.
throughout the.
But I am hearing around some of the boxes and things that protrude out of that, there is an issue.
There is an issue, and what we're looking at is actually requiring compaction.
You're looking to
tests all the
change
way
it,
around.
but right now that change doesn't exist.
It does not.
Okay.
And that's been our biggest problem is compaction around those, especially catch basins for stormwater.
Are we okay modifying the motion to say that we would require additional testing around those areas where we've had issues? Because according to the motion, it's on the utilities, it's not having somebody on site, it's just doing the regular
No,
testing.
just a
But we know
standard.
we've had- It is to standard, but where we know we've had problems, we know we're looking at it. If we're gonna give relief to not have somebody there, is it fair to say, let's do some additional testing around those manholes? Because that's a quick test. They can come in and do that fairly fast.
And compaction at the base before they set any. So we want to make sure that
Okay.
base is compacted before.
yeah,
they
it's a
set.
little more than
But
just.
but isn't that I mean, the base, I would think is is part of our standards, that you would have to have a compaction test at the bottom of that.
Sounds
Right.
like
We
there's a
haven't got that
problem.
written in that way.
Well, it sounds like it's
I don't
written
know that it
every
is,
so
but-
many feet, so you pick your.
Yeah, but
pick where
generally,
spot.
when you're putting a catch basin in or a manhole basin, there is a standard for those,
Typically what
for those basins themselves.
typically what'll happen though is you'll dig the hole, you'll lay the pipes in there, and then you'll start compacting up.
Placing dirt at the same time around the manholes. And sometimes they'll place a lift around a manhole and leave. And then sometimes they'll just be placing as we're going.
So Councilwoman, your amended motion was basically, from what you're understanding then, to cut the utilities portion out of the full-time being there.
And what I'm
With
hearing
what
from
he's telling you.
Councilman Belliston is just additional testing around those sites that are
Around those
coming out is what we want to
sites.
require.
Okay?
As The Washington City, I think, is starting something new, at least on the last subdivision we just had on, is they're having a pre-construction meeting on utilities, at least they did on the last week on one. And that was something that was really good because we were able to pull the contractor in, all the utility contractors and the city inspectors. And in those meetings, that's something that GTS requires is compaction tests around manholes.
What's happening here, if we say additional testing, we've set no standard. Okay, so what I would like to suggest for that amendment is that that standard be set
the new
by
standard
Mr.
would
Shaw.
be-
That standard be set by Mr. Shaw for this property in this area and our concerns. And so that we do have a standard that you're to measure to regarding the utility fills, not just the ordinance, but also around the items that protrude from the utilities.
So I think the standard we'd like to see is compaction on the base before the structure is set. And then 4 compaction tests around the structure in 18-inch lifts. And they can come back anytime if they're not doing those lifts at one time, they can come back and get them. But that we have record of lifts of every 18 inches.
Okay.
Is there a way we can go 2 feet on this just because it makes it easier as they're placing, because they usually put it in about 1 foot lifts?
The problem I have with 2-foot lifts with the type of the equipment they're using compacting, I don't know if we're getting the good.
Well, they can't place it.
Compaction.
They can't place it in 2 feet. But if they usually put about 1 foot in, compact that, put another foot in, compact that.
Well, if you want 1 foot compaction, it's fine.
I'm probably all right with 2-foot compactions.
Okay.
On the survey that
It's
you're
on
doing,
motion.
are you capable of detecting if the bottom portion was not properly compacted? If 2-foot lift, the bottom, is that even going to show up on your testing?
We can't test 2 feet deep.
Yeah.
The deepest we can test is usually 12 inches. Typical compaction test is about 8 inches deep. Usually you'll notice that if you're having a problem with compaction on an upper lift, if you have a 2-foot lift and the bottom lift is not properly compacted, it's usually very hard to get compaction above that. You requires more work, but no, we're only checking usually around 12 inches.
All right, we need to get this right.
Okay, yeah, let's start over. We'll start with
We
a
need
brand new motion.
To get the
So,
right. Okay. We're going to suggest exceptions to the original agreement of the 6 inches for curb and gutter base, the digging of utilities, the final cut after mass grading, and that the ordinance is in place for compaction and of the utilities as is in the ordinance, with the exception of some new standards around those articles that protrude. And those new standards are
base,
Under the base.
compaction under the base, and 4 testing sites around the base done in 2-foot lifts.
2-foot lifts. I want to be
4 spots around the base.
2 foot's adequate. Doesn't need to be 18. Okay, that's my motion.
Okay, the motion is for the change in the grading. That's the conditions of the preliminary plat for Shooting Star is to allow for when road base is being put down, curb and gutter for final grading of a lot, and for the utilities to be changed to meet current city standards other than those that have been mentioned for where the catch basins, manhole basins, those items protruding up through would be. That is the motion.
You already seconded it, but I'm
No, I
happy
have,
to-
this is a new motion, so
then-
there is
then
no
I'll-
second at this
I'm-
point.
I'm fine with, I'll second this one.
Okay, so Councilman Belliston is seconded. Is there any discussion to the motion? If not, I'll look for a vote.
I thought you were going to start over there.
Turek, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Clef eye.
Ward, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One question for the council then. Who would I, as we get out of the mass grading phase, and we're starting to get into the trimming of lot phase, or we're just putting a little bit of fill down on it, who am I supposed to talk to? I talked to Mike Shaw about saying, hey, we're out of this phase and we're going into this next phase. Talk to Ross.
Probably, my thought is I would coordinate with Mike, but more likely it'll land in Brandon Wrights.
Okay.
He's the one that handles those inspectors and whatnot that are out there, so.
Roger, is that good?
Would it be
That's
Brandon?
fine. Just keep Mike in the loop, but ultimately it'll be Brandon.
I'll talk with Brandon and let him communicate with Mike, or if he wants me
Yeah.
to talk to Mike.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good luck.
thank you. Item 8, our public hearing. We have a public hearing for consideration of granting a zone change request Z-1803 to change the zoning designation from residential single-family 6,000 square foot lots R16 to 1 and 2 family residential R2 lots. Requested is located at 234 North and 200 East. Applicant Jose Sandoval.
Thank you. As stated, zone change requests of approximately 0.39 acres. The current, as stated, is the single-family residential 6,000 square foot minimum, and the proposed change is to the 1 and 2 family residential R2 zoning designation. R2 zoning allows for either 1 2-family dwelling unit or 2 single-family dwelling units on a single lot. Applicant is seeking zoning approval in hopes of developing a second home on this particular property in the near future. And I probably need to explain that a little more. There's already a building that's on there that he wants to convert into by bringing it up to the standards. And that's in this particular piece of the particular parcel if you've been to the location. I just want to explain that. The general plan land use map designation for this location is a medium density residential, which allows for density ratios of 4.5 to 6 dwelling units per acre. The surrounding zoning districts are R16 to the north, the west, the east, and the south. Staff's reviewed the proposed zone change. It does fall within the general plan land use. And the Planning Commission reviewed this request at their March 7th, 2018 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-18-03 for the zone change from the R16 to the R2. That is on to you, the City Council, with based on the findings in your report. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may
So
have.
Drew, just to be clear, so what the intended purposes of this is to take this outbuilding that's there now,
Yeah, let me
bring it up to standard and create a second home out of that. Is that really what we're talking about?
Yes, that's exactly, very well spoken there. That's exactly what we're doing. So let me find, let's see, I'm on Second North and here we go right here. You can see the home that says 232 North, and then just to the above it that doesn't have an address on it is an existing building there. And that's the one that he wants to turn into a second residence on the parcel, and thus the R2 zoning is what he's seeking. So kind of helps see this a little
I
better.
was going to say, it's hard to see from that. Is there enough room for setbacks and whatnot with the other residences around it?
Well, what happened is he's,
already encroaching.
well, depends on how, we always just say you have a side yard, a rear yard, and this odd particular location, it meets it because it's X amount of feet away from the existing home. We've had to go down, and again, these lines are, I told him he had to make sure that he had at least 8 feet on that piece to the left, had to have 10 feet on the north side, and he actually ended up purchasing, I'm going to highlight that blue square. The reason it's showing up now is because he purchased that from the adjoining property owner to give him that room to meet the minimum of those setbacks all the way around.
So does he meet it on the left side then?
Pardon me, I couldn't.
Does he meet that on the left side?
The left side has to be an 8 foot because again, we have and this is one of these weird lots. We have to, when we look at this, we try to just make sure we got 4 sides that meet one of those criteria. So that one will have the 8 foot on the left side. Top side will have a 10 foot, then 10 feet away from the house. So I said, well, we have the 20 left. So that's why the extra feet had to be bought to that particular area.
So if you go back and look at the 232 North property, it looks like based on the GIS that it actually encroaches on 236.
These lines though are a bit off, and we know that. I wish we,
They're not
well,
10 feet off.
in some
And that's what
cases,
setbacks are required, right?
well, it's 8 and 10 in an R16.
Okay.
And
But
in the
your
R2.
GIS isn't 8 feet off.
Well, they're known to kind of be from time to time.
So you're looking at
I'm
you're
giving you
looking on the map on 232
well, I'm going to
north
give you
on
an
the
example, right?
236 north boundaries, right?
Well, you can see right here, the GIS line goes across the roof.
But see the one on,
I'm just,
I know, but here's my point, because I know, because I've raised this months and months and months ago. The property line that you can see on that, see that property that says 236? See that gray line right there? That's actually supposed to be up on that fence that you see the shadow of. So that's what I'm saying. These GIS lines are, they're hard. They shift a bit. I know. No, it's not even him. It's how the program, when it's loaded, comes in, and even you can see the street line over here on 200 East. That shouldn't be that far over. That's So I know what you're
Once it's
saying.
verified, it just threw me off.
Any other questions for Drew?
So what's in there now? It's just a barn or?
I think maybe the previous owner, I don't know all the history on it, was using it as another residence and it wasn't a legal situation.
So there's sewer into it, there's plumbing, there's.
I don't even know if that's there yet. If this goes through, we'd come in and make sure that it had its proper
It'll have a building
sewage.
permit,
It'll have a permit. It'll make sure all the water and all those
habitable and
things.
Checked up and make sure there's no issue.
Correct. And if there is an issue with, all that he's going to have, in fact, I think Roger Bundy has already surveyed the property. So I would go and find out where those stakes are and we would definitely go in and check. If we had to move it a little bit, it would have to be moved a little bit. Or added on this direction and cut off on this one, or whatever it takes to make it. We'll then go through when the building permit is applied for, when and if that happens.
Any chance it'd be cheaper to tear it down and start over?
For those who have done some of these, they'll bear witness that indeed sometimes it is better to do that. But they'll have to apply for that and meet all that.
What would be
standard.
required on this property should we grant this new zoning for parking?
They would have to make sure that they had, I would need 2 covered stalls, 2 non-covered stalls with a pad underneath them to meet the minimum.
And at what point in the process would that be addressed and be required?
When they came in for that second permit or to establish this one in the back.
So the way it stands right now, that current lot without anybody living in the outbuilding, does that even meet code with the lack of covered parking and a lack of?
It would predate. I can't go back and make, that ordinance came, and if you've been there, I think this is quite an older dwelling. What's that in? Can I bring that up on this one? No, here, let's just override me. Did you turn your mirror on?
While you're doing that, Drew, if this goes to an R2, what's the maximum potential tenants or households that could be on the property?
2.
Households? Or
So that's-
You can only have 2 dwellings.
Okay.
It's either a twin or you can have 2 singles meeting all the setbacks.
and is there a requirement for any restrictions on how many people can be in those in current city code?
The short answer is no, because we don't put that on anybody.
Yeah.
And the best example, I hate to use this one, but it's one I use often, is that, we live in Utah, large families. So when we start hitting those things, because we have some folks that'll have 16 people in a family, regular old family, mom, dad, and 14 kids sometimes. So we don't really, in a lot of places, don't put limits on how many, as long as it meets the residential standards.
So if the outbuilding went under construction, they would have to apply for a permit there, and the parking requirements would apply to that building or to the entire property?
It would be to the entire property in this case, because they've made the change in the upgrade. That's when you have to then meet the new standards, not just the
new
existing.
code, right?
To the new
standards.
code, yeah.
Okay.
You would have to have 2 covered, 2 non-covered, the minimum, and on the property, that would have to be addressed that way.
Is there a curb and gutter issue here?
Oh, it's there.
Got a curb and gutter on the street.
Any other questions for Drew? If not, this is a public hearing, and we'll go ahead and open that. I heard somebody say they'd like to hear from the applicant. Did we hear that first? All right, we'll go ahead and open our public hearing. With that being said, if the applicant's here, we'd ask them to come forward first. No applicant? Jose out there? Jose, will you want to come up? If you just want to state your name for the record, Jose, into the mic.
Okay, I'm Jose Sandoval. I'm the owner of that property. Well, recently, this is what I want your permit because he have a meeting I was before when I bought her. They already have, but they already take away. The inches, there's another side. And I needed that, but my boy, he went to college. I live in a small town, don't have anything. So that's why.
Okay.
So,
So ultimately, the reason is you've got a son coming to college and you
Yeah.
want to make a residence for him. That's
right,
what you're
that's what I want you, This Reese's.
questions for the applicant,
And-
council?
Sorry, and this is my son. This is my son.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did I catch you right? You said something about water?
No.
Oh.
No.
All right.
I not say the water. I not say the water.
Okay, all right.
One of my questions on this, just to understand, is if this is approved, there would be other code things that must be verified and checked to make sure that this is a habitable residence according to the code as we have it now. Are you aware that that's what will happen in this process?
Mhm. Because they already have a water, sewer, everything. Only the power not because, they're really old. So,
So we won't see this. This will just be all done through departments. Okay.
So there will be significant improvements on the property if this is granted and must be checked and verified. You are aware of that?
Okay, no other questions. Thank
no,
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If there's anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this particular application, we'd welcome you to come forward. Seeing none, I'll come back to council for closure of our public hearing.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Granger, seconded by Councilman Belliston. I got that right that time. Ward, aye. Clef, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. This will be voted on in 2 weeks. So that's, go through our public hearing process. So we have 2 more weeks that if you have more input or anybody out there has more input that they'd like to give to the council, we certainly welcome that over the next couple of weeks. And you'll probably see some of us up around that property looking things over. So it gives us a little time to do a little of our own homework there too. So item B is another public hearing for consideration of granting zone change request Z-1804 to change the zoning designation from PUD to Planned Unit Development Residential PUD-R. The request is located at Bella Vista Drive and Telegraph. Applicant SJ Property Holdings.
We'll let that continue to load. And I'll begin. The applicant is requesting, as stated, approval of a zone change from current PUD to a new PUD of approximately 29.21 acres. The requested change is from the current PUD to a new proposed PUD-R, which is under our new PUD ordinance. Applying for both the multifamily development standards and the short-term rental development standards over a particular portion of the project. The PUD-R request is for the purpose of developing the parcel into a mixed-use residential project consisting of 111 dwelling units in the form of 63 townhomes, which you see basically on the south side of Bonnie Lane, and follow that up with 48 single-family detached units over here next to Horizons West and kind of behind the LDS church there in that particular area on the west side of Bella Vista Drive. The name of the proposed development would be Sunwood at Bella Vista. The general plan land use designation is the medium-high density residential, and that carries a 7 to 12 dwelling unit per acre density ratio, and it also has the medium density residential, which carries a 4.5 to 6 dwelling unit per acre density ratio. The surrounding zoning to the parcel is R2A and C2 to the north, PUD to the west and east, and open space with R18 to the south, which is the Bella Vista development itself. The density ratio for the proposed development portion of this project is 7.4 dwelling units per acre, well within the designated ratio as set forth in the general plan for the two mixes on the location. The project's been through the zoning application, as the city council is well aware, several times over the past couple of years. The latest proposal is attempting to put into its design all the requested items from the past denials. The applicant has again tried to have a variety of housing types and designs from its latest proposal. Staff reviewed the newest proposal, finding the design and the layout satisfactory with the comments from previous applications. The applicant has also chosen to bring portions of the project to the city council in a phasing format, this being that phase one, allowing the focus to be given on smaller areas rather than the entire 78-acre parcel that they currently have as a future development as well. Staff has a few concerns, including the collected efforts to gain second access tied on 1100 East that we have brought up many times. As you see on the far left side here, right above the civil science nameplate there. Also, the second concern is the volume of the vacation rentals being sought. And this is staff's thoughts relating to the project as a whole. Sorry, this could possibly be made a condition of approval as part of the preliminary plat process as well. And I'm just sorry, I jumped back to the 1100 East case that staff has concerns about. With those said, staff has reviewed the requested zone change and finds it to conform to the general plan, the zoning ordinance. Planning Commission reviewed the request at their March 7th, 2018 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-18-04 for the zone change request from the old planned unit development to the proposed planned unit development residential, the PUD-R, with the request for both multifamily and for short-term rental development standards, noting specifically that the short-term vacation rental area be restricted, and this is in part of the Planning Commission's motion, restricted to the east side of Bella Vista Drive and south of Bonnie Lane, and this was moved on to you, the City Council, and that's based on the findings that you see in the report and the conditions that are there as well. So as again, that extra condition on 13 was that's the Planning Commission recommend that approval, but limited, because you see in your report, one of your exhibits has the blue area, what they're shooting for. And let me bring that one up now so we can make sure that we are clear. So what the Planning Commission did was eliminated all of these single detached ones on the west side of Bella Vista Drive, but they recommended the other area. They were fine with the vacation rental over everything south of Bonnie Lane. So basically, I'll take that out, is what their recommendation on to you, the City Council, was. So with that said, I'd like to...
How many in that section? How many?
It would be all of the townhomes. So what did I put on there? 63 units for vacation rental on those townhomes. With that, I'd like to also get and just go through the exhibits with, of course, we require elevations, and these are the ones that they've brought to you.
Those are the single family, but we don't have elevations or floor plans on the.
You don't have those? Those should have been
I
transferred.
think they're just below that.
They
There's
might
the
be.
threeplexes were.
In fact, yeah, they're right. If you just scroll up.
Oh.
Sorry, we should have a big arrow saying.
I think that's the same, isn't that? I think that looked to me the same as.
Those are the ones you saw before. They haven't changed those.
Yeah,
Those
the
are kind of that
threeplexes stayed
mixed.
the same.
And these are, they will be in the form of a 3 or 4-plex unit, and that's their elevations that you see with the double car garage. These are the back sides of those units, and from the side view on the townhomes.
And over there to the west.
So the west side on the
Setbacks
detached
are
are these are the single
That's what
family.
these would be, is over on that west side, but the setback to the face of the garage is 10 feet from the street.
Well, again, that's the pad that they will own.
I understand.
And so what ends up happening, they have to be 20 feet back for a driveway. But I'm just gonna,
Does it say that they have to be 20 feet back to the garage face?
Because that is what we requested last time in the review of this.
See, I don't mind if it's a 10-foot setback as long as there's something in there that says 20 feet in the garage.
Well, doesn't our ordinance now say that? I think that when we changed our ordinance, didn't we spell that out in the new ordinance? Thought we did.
actually, it does say that in the PUD, but it'd be good to have as a condition. I thought that I'd actually put that in as a condition. Just breeze through them real quick. If not, that can be condition number 14. It is part of, they'd have to still meet, I think my first condition always says the project shall conform with the standards of the PUD zone. So it is stated in there, but I don't mind having it written in black and white as one of the extra conditions, but either way, we're covered on that, but I'm fine, you know.
We talked a little bit the other day, the past applications that had separate PUD and separate overnight rental. This is combined, so just for the sake of the rest of the council, it's one application that includes both sides of it.
So there's not a, so I'm clear. There is not a separate, if this is approved, it's approved as an overnight rental project. There isn't a PUD project and then an overnight rental component to it.
Well, it's all, those three categories are under there, and that's why we're going to specify they're hitting this one and this one and this one. So you can restrict particular areas. That's what the planning commission did. They
Okay,
said,
so that's,
yeah, I'll just go back to that real quick. They said, we're gonna approve your PUD and all your designs and everything, but the one thing we're not going to is we're taking the blue shaded area off of
the overnight
the
rental.
single family
I just know in the
detached.
past, everything's been, we've had a PUD port component to it and an overnight rental component.
Yeah,
to it.
because it was we had a PUD zone, but we had an overlay zone to put over.
Correct.
Now we've
So you've
thrown
combined
it.
them. Okay, that's what I
So
wanna
they're
make sure
applying.
we're
That's
clear.
why, yeah, I
Thank you.
spelled out in there.
Thank you,
They're asking
Councilman,
for,
bringing that up because I was not aware.
yeah. So you can kind of mix and match, which I kind of like about our new PUD. And
Where was
And-
those three that you mentioned? Because I was looking at the plans.
My bad,
the three what?
You said there was 3 facets to it.
Facets.
They've
I
taken out
disrupted him.
those to the west there, the planning commission
Oh.
recommendation that those not be overnight rentals, that basically just you
Right.
move over here.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood. We got the single family off to the west, the multifamily to the south, and then the overnight rental, anything in the blue house.
In the blue, but the recommendation from your planning commission was the vacation rental only be east of Bella Vista Drive, south of Bonnie Lane in the proposed area. That doesn't mean
So
they
the
get
planning
this.
commission totally
They're
owns
not giving them
everything
the,
west of,
yeah, they didn't
Bella
give them
Vista
this
Drive.
future development approved right now. They're just saying that as the applicant has proposed this area, that basically said all the townhomes in this particular phase 1 can be vacation rental. That doesn't mean that they've approved anything
Okay.
beyond. So does that clear that up? So
So-
they've eliminated the blue out of the detached on the west side.
Like mud.
So where
Yeah.
are we with the additional road issue?
With, what's that, the additional?
1100 east.
Mhm.
Oh,
This says 1100 east would have to be, well, they're over 30, so they'd have to be doing it anyway.
yeah, and that's where and I'm fine with I'm fine with addressing that at the, at the preliminary plat stage, which is where it should come into play anyway. But we just wanted to be on notice that, hey, at this stage, there better be those things that need to be ironed out, or we will not give you, because again, it's going to be the standard that we're going to have because of the number of units.
Over on the west side, where
Yes.
we've got the walking trail in front of the houses and whatnot. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it's a problem to do that. It's just that it's not a walking trail if there's going to be driveways and, if that's.
Is this the one you're talking, this little area right
Yeah,
here?
that area right there. If it's a 20-foot setback to your garage door, then it's a
Oh.
driveway. It's not a walking trail.
Oh,
So
I
it's one or
see
the
what
other,
you're-
not both.
Right. But you can
wanna
see
start
these
the
lots
dri-
are a
you
little
wanna do a
deeper.
Walking trail that goes across and then go 20 feet to your driveway. That's fine.
Yeah, these lots are definitely deeper, and
And I don't know that a trail even needs to be there because I think people, sometimes trails can
Well, they
come and
probably
go,
got a
you can have
sidewalk.
some
You would think a
sections that-
sidewalk.
Well, because it's a
is-
private street, sometimes we don't have those luxuries in there. So I think they're putting this in here for people to be able to have a designated area, which I would recommend it probably stay in, just so we don't get and say, well, because sometimes on our private streets, they don't have the sidewalks on them. This would be a,
That's fine. I
Yeah.
look at it and say, is it a driveway or a trail? It's one or the other, not both.
Is there a need for the top trail to hook to the bottom trail?
no, because they're going into the amenity area and they can, and hopefully, again, this is conceptual on this, that they would actually, if it is a designated 10-foot wide through the whole thing, that it all tied together, not that you would get off one, have to go across grass or,
See that there's
rock
more
or something. I
trail.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
we
Yeah.
definitely
I
would
hope they
have them.
tie that together.
I think when the design came in for the finished product, those would be tied together.
Any other questions for Drew at this time? If not, this is a public hearing, and we would go ahead and open it up to the public. Discussion concerning this project. As you come forward, if you'll state your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. My name is Terry Hughes, and I live in Bella Vista subdivision. I'm not going to go over everything that we've rehashed for the last 5 or 6 meetings over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Thank
But
you,
I am-
because this council's very appraised on those things. So
I'll put it in an email. And
there
send
you
it to
go. We appreciate those too.
I am concerned, and Drew, you made a statement I wrote down. I just wanted some clarification. You said 3 or 4 plexes on the townhomes. There are 3 plexes on the map. So can they be made 4 plexes? Would that add to the density or reduce the size of the units, or was that just a misstatement? Okay. Okay. They're all 3s. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Yeah, there are several concerns I have real quick, and that is in previous council meetings, the council has been steadfast in wanting to know what the entire project's going to look like. This does not show that, and that concerns me for the future development areas of what we're going to have put in. And I don't know why the council would back away from that requirement of wanting to see the entire project, because it's been discussed numerous times and it's not here. My second concern is the number of short-term rental overlay units. I don't see why it has to have it. We don't need that many short-term. You just approved a final plat, I believe it was called, for a short-term rental subdivision. We've got a new hotel going in up right off of the freeway at exit 13. And it just seems that we're getting oversaturated with vacation rentals throughout this city. And I understand that not every unit that's a vacation rental is used as a vacation rental. There are a lot that are owner occupied. But it seems to me as we're developing our community, I would rather have people that live here full time adding to our community than a lot of people coming in because we keep adding vacation rentals and these properties sit vacant. Those are my main concerns. The lack of what's going to happen in the future after the council has been steadfast, and the number in the short-term overlay. And I'm sure that my neighbors and associates have other concerns. And then, but finally, addressing 1100 East. I know that discussion has been made with Winter Haven to take some property to align 1100 East with the north side of 1100 on the north side of Telegraph. But I also remember, and I can't remember which one of the gentlemen from Public Works at a previous meeting indicated that if that doesn't work, we could still construct 1100 East, but when you got to Telegraph, we put a big island in the middle of Telegraph and require everybody to make a right-hand turn, which would make sense because of the offset. And that'd be a total disaster because most of the people that leave that subdivision turn left and go west. So I would hate to see us say, okay, we put in 1100 East, the developer not able to come to some type of solution or an agreement with Winter Haven, and they don't give up their property, and that street goes straight through, and we're stuck with a right-hand turn only, which is going to result in people making a right turn going down past that island and making a U-turn to go back where they want to go, or forcing everybody back down to Bella Vista Drive. So I would hope that those issues are addressed. Council, before any consideration of this is given. Right now,
Thank you,
that's all
Terry.
I
Any
have.
questions from council? Good points. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you. Just remind those as they come forward that we'd like to remember to keep on new units. If we've heard them before, they've been brought to light. It doesn't do any good to answer them 15 times. So
Can we use the Elmo?
if you'd state your name for the record as well, too, please.
Pardon me?
If you would state your name for the record so we know.
I just get that set up. My name is Art Reed, and I'm a resident of Bella Vista. Good evening. The last time this council met on this development and unanimously rejected it, the developer spokesperson was given time to speak. If you recall, after speaking extensively on his involvement with the LDS Church, he then offered a quote by a sports celebrity. Well, I would like to also offer a statement by a great sports celebrity, and I quote, "The more you look at this, it's just like deja vu all over again." It was Yogi Berra.
I was going to ask who did it, so thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome. Mr. Berra was correct. The more we spend time on this project, the more we see the same rejected proposals presented time and again. We have seen trailer homes rejected, brought back again, and rejected again. We have seen super high density rejected and brought back again. And now we see the project, we have seen this project rejected for breaking the land up into different segments, and now it's brought back again. This latest proposal was rejected a year ago. The council determined that this land should not be broken up and that it should be seen as and voted on as one large area. But here we are again. This proposal has already been rejected, so why are we even here? The developer's spokesperson may say that they are only offering so many proposals because they are trying to meet the city's demands. I'm always upside down. What can I say? Very well. Well, the developer spokesperson may say that they're only offering so many proposals because they're trying to meet the city's demands, but that doesn't make sense when it's almost the same rejected proposal each time. So who knows? There's an old advertising adage that goes, irritate, 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 sell. Perhaps that's what they're trying to do. Don't let it happen. However, they have mastered the irritate part. I'll give them that. Just don't fall for the sell. They are quick to offer instruction to this council on how it should be more sophisticated, and even offered a primer on how this council should conduct its business. I guess they did that because they weren't getting their way. They have even in a backhanded way threatened to sue. They also claim to be vested in this project and don't intend to stop trying. My question is, if they are so vested, why haven't they purchased the land? Why are we even discussing the use of land they do not even own? This developer doesn't seem to have enough faith in their concept, or is it concepts? It's hard to keep track. They don't have enough faith in their concepts to even purchase the land they claim they want to develop. They have done a few drawings and had some holes drilled, but in development terms, that's like kicking a bumper on a used car for sale. On the other hand, I own my land. I have invested in my property. I am a resident of this city. In fact, I purchased the land before I built my home on it because I had faith in my building project. And I am concerned about what happens to the value of my property, as are all of the residents that live around this proposed development. and it is just one of the reasons I am here in defiance of this proposal. The others being that I have come to really enjoy this community and look forward to seeing positive growth and a revitalization of this area. It has great potential. Please don't sell it short. This proposed development is wrong for all of the reasons this council has stated. And I'm sure I speak for everyone here when I say that we appreciate the support you as a council have given to our wishes and our concerns. Look at this development as a whole. Look at the high density they don't want us to see by splitting up their proposal. They have talked about wanting a family neighborhood, but there are no sidewalks for children to walk safely and play on. They may say they can do that, but if it's not in the contract on their drawings you're voting on, what they say is meaningless. To quote again from Yogi Berra, he said, "It ain't over till it's over." This has gone on far too long. It's time it was over. This council should give this developer the opportunity to take this development elsewhere. I think of some cities that I'm sure would love to have it in their community. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Reed? Hey, folks, no, we're not in the gymnasium, so we will hold applause. That's not appropriate in this meeting, so thank you. You can pat his back as he leaves if you'd like.
Wait,
But
can I say
just,
something?
yeah, go ahead.
I know I learned a term called argument ad hominem, and those are when remarks become personal rather than the merit or the dismerit of a particular proposal. And I hope that that civility and respect for everyone here reigns.
Thank you, Councilwoman, because I was going to bring up that same point that said we would like your comments to stay on point of concerns of the project, not the developers, not their personalities, nothing they're proposed. As far as them personally, we're talking the project. Keep your points to that, if you would, please.
My name is Larry Murray. I'm also a resident up at Bella Vista. I'll try to keep my comments as much as I can original, but I think Art covered most of them. I too feel very strongly that we have already been here. Last year, the community insisted on seeing the entire PUD, not piecemeal phases. And the reason is we don't want to be surprised. City Council did agree previously with this and with the community on this point and sent the project back. I thought the City Council message was crystal clear. And apparently it's not, because that's why we're revisiting the topic. So I'm going to urge the City Council again to make the message crystal clear. I think the community and the City Council have promoted a vision of a family-friendly development. I think this is a very high-density project that is basically, to me, looks like an enormous hotel complex masquerading as a mixed-use, affordable family housing. Let's be clear, multiplex townhome rentals and high-density single housing units do not create a family community. I think lower and middle-class families would run from this development. I'm going to speak just for a second on the overnight rental issue. And I think there are several points that we have objected to previously that are still in play. First of all, the concept that overnight rentals are promoting a transient community, not a family-friendly, stable community. Second, I believe the city's already inundated with overnight rentals. And third, as an example of future problems, numerous California cities are already either considering eliminating or banning overnight rentals. And the list of cities includes South Lake Tahoe, Monterey, Palm Springs, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach. And the reasons are excessive noise, parking, trash, late night partying, too many house guests. We would have the same problems. And finally, as we pointed out before, the area that we're studying here is not a resort area. Even the developer has justified his development plans by characterizing the surrounding areas as basically run down. For the record, since our last public hearing on overnight rentals, we're still not a resort area. We urge the city council to turn down the proposal. Thank you.
Questions?
I probably ought to, let me speak to the perception of piecemealing the project, because I understand it's a concern. I understand it's a concern for everybody here. Part of the problem that we've had is, you know, they've come in the past and said, okay, this area off to the west, you know, we want it, that's where we want to get started. And typically you'd phase a project in, but when it's the entire project, if I don't like something over here, I can't even approve them to get started over there. You know, and I understand that, you know, where you're going with it. What they're proposing now is along the same lines of what they've proposed, but it's some of the areas that we've been more comfortable with, not the areas that we've been less comfortable with. And so they have to have a phase one somewhere. The market is most likely going to change throughout the process. I mean, you start something and you think that, well, I'm going to have my whole project's going to be this full build out. And the reality is you start over here in phase one, and in phase two, you say, you know what, that really didn't work. We need to kind of modify a little bit. And to do the entire piece, we've tried to do it, and that's part of what's delayed us to this point. And I think it's fair to say we're going to look at a phase one, get comfortable with a phase one, understanding if they try to deviate too much from what we've discussed in the past for phase two, phase three, that will get chewed up at that point, because they're all going to be new public hearings. They're going to have to come back. If they do a phase two, they're going to have to come back and do a phase two. But my concern for the developer's sake is that he never gets to even start without trying to break it down somewhat. You know, so I think we have to look at their side too and be fair that they need to be able to have a phase one. Let's get comfortable with the phase one, and then phase two and phase three will beat them up in the future.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I understand you're trying to balance it, and of course, you understand our concerns.
Sure.
That it's a PUD.
Sure.
And a PUD shouldn't be, trust us, don't worry, you know, we're going to do the right thing, because we haven't seen that in the past.
Well, and that's,
where it
yeah.
says future development, we're not approving anything.
Yeah, it would
in
be
that
another
future
PUD process to come in.
And,
They don't get an approval to put one permit in it.
right. And generally, you know, these pieces all interconnect in a PUD. So when we see one piece and we don't see the rest of the pieces, we just don't know if this is going to be Frankenstein because it was built that way.
But do you feel comfortable in the process? Because I know this is a change of, and I wasn't here through some of this, but if we were asking them to put out a piece that we could all agree on, everything finished, and we failed to agree on anything. We say that if we can agree on this one piece, and then they'll still have to agree on every single other piece as it comes in. I'm asking you though, personally, would you feel comfortable with that process of revisiting that for phase two, phase three, phase four?
I understand we'd have to do it, but I don't feel, as long as it's a PUD, I don't feel comfortable in seeing one piece that seems okay.
So why?
Because I don't know how it's going to interact with the rest.
So here's the reality of what's happened in Sienna Hills. Sienna Hills came in, they had an overall approval, which is essentially a large PUD. They got doing phase one. Well, guess what? Every single time they've got to shift a roadway, every single time they've got to shift a development pod. It's a whole brand new amendment to the development. And so it's basically the same thing. They can come in, let's say we approve the whole project. They can come in and amend the development, and it's a new process every single time. Or we can give them a phase one, and then we go through and work through phase two and three as they come in. And they still have the right to amend in a project just like Sienna Hills.
And we'll still have the right to say no to things we don't like that come up in the future. So I guess I would be interested in your opinion on the project just what is proposed currently?
Yeah,
I recognize that you have concerns about the PUD and the process. You'd like to see the whole thing, but I'm interested in your take on the project that is proposed currently.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like I said, it certainly doesn't look family friendly. To me, it looks like we're trying to turn this into a very, very transient community.
But and the family friendly comment though is, I take it as something that they had said earlier that they were shooting for family friendly, and you're feeling like they're missing that.
Absolutely.
But are you expecting this to be a family friendly project?
That's what we're asking for.
Well, I don't know though. Unfortunately, we don't get asked for anything. We just get stuff brought to us. And we
Right.
have to say
Absolutely.
yes or no.
Absolutely. So that's what we're asking for. Lower density, family friendly.
Than what is
and
currently
the
shown.
overnight rentals, I think, absolutely destroys that. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Thank you.
Yes.
Just the thought that even if they showed us a design for the whole thing and we approved the design for the whole thing, given that it was mixed and it was mixed use and there were recreational areas and another road was in and et cetera, doesn't stop them from only doing the short-term rental part and never doing the rest of it. And they don't have to finish the whole project. They can leave that land fallow and not ever develop the rest of it. Okay. And it appears to me that they're trying to do the thing that will generate some income, that has the least elevations, that has the highest density, that seems to be the area that they're focusing on right now, trying to see if they can get enough going that they can complete the rest of the development, which we haven't approved. So yeah, there's kind of a catch-22, I'm sure, for them as well as for us. But you've heard us enough. You've listened to all those hearings. It's been going on for a year and a half. I think you have a good sense of the council's concern for your residences and where you live and what the impact will be, and to do all that we can to make sure that this is something that the city of St. George can be proud of, that improves the area of where it will reside. I don't think those intentions by the council are changing necessarily, but something's going to get approved. Okay. And the answer isn't that nothing gets approved. Something will get approved that balances what the developers feel like that they can do and what we're trying to do for the city and for you, and that makes it all unreasonably, I suppose, good for everybody. I don't know that that's possible, but you've watched this long enough to know that that's what we're trying to do. And if you don't like the way you can do it, you can elect somebody else.
I think from my perspective, to focus on phase one is not to try and piecemeal a project. I think it's to try and uncloudy the waters of phase one and then work on phase two when the time comes. And I hope people realize that.
Is there more that would speak to that? I'd be interested to hear people speak to just the project that's before us.
Yeah, that's probably what.
And I wonder, because I could really use some input on how the residents and folks that have been here and dealing with this longer than and I'd welcome you to come forward. You've already stood up.
Yeah, I just did, in keeping with what Councilman Ward said, and that would probably be most appropriate for these types of public hearings, is we are discussing what the proposal is, not what past proposals were, not what we think might happen futuristically. We're talking about this proposal, and would ask to keep those comments concerning what we're seeing up here and discussing those concerns that you may have pro or con. Go ahead and come on up, state your name for the record.
My name is Lauren Lau, and I'm also a resident of Bella Vista. And I'm not going to go over, I agree with a number of things that have been said, but I would just like to point out a couple of things. In the Planning Commission, many of us were in attendance with the Planning Commission. And Drew, I think you will remember this. In the proposal as it is here tonight, there's a difference versus what we saw at the Planning Commission. And one of the recommendations that came, apparently it didn't come through the minutes or come formally to the commission, city commission, but there was a lot for, I guess, the recreational vehicles and so forth, which I do not see on this plan. And the planning commission, am I correct, Drew? The planning commission.
It's not on that plan, but it's in our packet.
It is in the packet. Okay, well, that, in the materials that we were given, so I think that's a concern, given, as we've talked about, the increased volume of traffic on Bella Vista. And we certainly don't want, as we've seen in some other communities, recreational vehicles and so forth. One of the problems we have on Bella Vista Drive right now is we have big rigs that park there fairly frequently overnight. And, you know, people may have a tendency to, if there is no parking. So if you're going to address that, that would be appreciated. Okay, and then I just would like to also reemphasize the criticality of 1100 East, as if most of you didn't have the experience of trying to get out onto Telegraph with one lane closed off eastbound this past week. But let me tell you, if you get much more traffic and something isn't done to alleviate the traffic, another exit entrance, then I think with the additional number of houses and units and so forth, I think we'll have a real problem. So I'd just like to bring that.
So before you go though, so you, just to be clear, you would be opposed to motorhome parking in there because of the detriment it would have to the traffic. Am I hearing you correctly?
No,
No, it just wants parking.
as it was proposed, I think the RV and other parking, I don't know that there's room on the driveways and so forth. So there was going to be a separate lot for RVs and toys and boats and other kinds of things that was separate. And I guess, Drew, you're going to talk about that.
But I'm just trying to get a sense of your take on that. You're for or against that?
I think he thought that lot was important. And it wasn't
No, the
being
lot is
shown, so
important.
he-
It wasn't shown on the
Yeah, he was
materials.
concerned 'cause it wasn't- we
I
weren't
wanted
seeing
to
it,
make
but
sure
it's-
that, and in fact, the planning commission said that should be done first.
Okay. And your opinion on that? You want that
Yeah,
there? You
if,
would like
if this is going to be approved, then yes, that absolutely needs to be there,
Critical
because the current lot, as my understanding, is basically full. It's fully rented out.
And you brought up 1100 East. What would you like to see done with 1100 East?
Well, either Bella Vista Drive or 1100 East, I'd like to see a traffic light. It needs to be wide enough that there's plenty of, for two-way traffic going both north and south of the Telegraph. So it's an intersection, and it's not a right turn only. And then correspondingly, if Bella Vista is the better location, so that there is
for traffic control.
For traffic control. Yeah.
Can I ask Mr. Shaw if that build out, would it qualify for a traffic light?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Can I also say, and you'll forgive me, indulge me, but the way for us to handle that traffic is to barricade I-15 on Easter weekend?
A traffic signal would be warranted based on the turning movements that would come out of there. I don't think there'd be enough traffic generated alone by the development. So it would be based mainly on left-hand turning movements. And my opinion, at build out, they probably would require.
Do you know what Because there's federal reg on that. Do you know what the federal reg is on that?
I don't. There's actually 9 warrants on a signal, and you need to meet 3 of those warrants.
Because we
to
went
get the
through this
signal.
on just a stop sign, and it was
Yeah. So
So
quite a bit involved
the
with just
important
that.
point
so.
is individuals drive traffic signals. We don't get traffic signals until certain.
Yeah, basically what he said was that left-hand turn
Left-
movements.
on that intersection, I would believe it'd be the left-hand turning movement would be the issue that would
Push the warrants.
push the
to-
warrant. Traffic accidents, pedestrians. There's,
Yeah, there's
like you say,
9
there's
yeah,
9
9
warrants. I don't
points,
remember
yeah.
9 of all 9 of
Bike
them.
lanes.
But, even 1100 East would probably warrant a signal before the Buena Vista intersection or Bella Vista.
Simply because you got more traffic coming, you've got dual traffic, especially if this 1100 came through, you'd
Correct.
have dual
1100
traffic.
is an arterial, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Hi, I'm Tamara Goodrich. I have an apartment on 1080 East Telegraph, which is on the screen there. And my concern is I moved here in 2014, and the sewer smell is really, really bad. And so I just feel like with all the new housing that's added in, that will add to that problem. And it's not just in front of my apartment on Telegraph, it's also behind Bella Vista Storage complex.
Actually, ma'am, I think
More will help that problem.
Actually helps the problem, because the problem is, if you don't have
Whatever.
enough
All I
water
know
going in
is
the system, it
it's
sits
been
in
really bad, and it's been that way for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so that's one of my concerns. And then the other one is where I'm at right there. I feel like I need a wall along that 1100 East, because it will just be,
So you're north of
East
Telegraph, correct?
I'm right there. I'm on the south of.
So you're right on the
Telegraph.
corner of
Yep,
1100
right
East.
there.
and-
Mhm. So,
Any questions for Tamara?
because the street will just be right, 13 feet from
Yeah, you'd
my
be right.
window.
And I think that was the discussion once upon a time when we were
And
discussing.
I was never
1100.
invited. This is the first time
Yeah,
I've even
I
known
know the
about this
discussion
meeting.
was, walls versus non-walls, and there was a lot of discussion.
Is the rest of those buildings there, that's the rest of those are
Storage
Yeah,
storage,
there's
right?
storage units. There's the apartment, a 2-story apartment right there.
Yeah, that roadway, the discussion was to actually shift, and there's some movement with landowners, like I said, probably inappropriate really to.
Yeah,
talk
it's
much
Winter
now.
Haven is right there.
So,
Drew, will you back out just so I can ponder the alignment of that? Thank you. That goes in.
yeah, and I'll share with you, but really probably not appropriate this time. Yeah, the shift would, so it lines that intersection up. Yeah. That was the discussion that was being had with those other property owners of trading properties and moving the roads.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Charles Pakchoyan. I will be a future resident of Bella Vista in about Pakchoyan. Spell it?
You need, as I said, that might be.
Pakchoyan. I have a property I've already purchased at Bella Vista and plan to be a resident here about a year from now. I'm not going to sit and remind the council of the decisions and the reasons and why for us or wherefore of what was happening in the past.
Thank you. We're aware of
We're
those.
aware of what you've done. I can't agree, though, that we cannot go past this proposal for a couple of reasons. One of them is this is not the first time this has been presented. We know what the developer's overall plan has been in the past. We know how many total units that they have proposed multiple times in the 360 or something range. There was problems with that. So for myself, if I was looking at this and I'm saying, okay, this is phase one, the density in the area that's being proposed is pretty much what it was before. So now we take the phase two, if it continues at the same density that this is at, then And I understand what you said, Councilman Belliston. We're going to look at each phase separately. And if I remember right, a year ago, I don't want to quote you, 'cause I'm not sure 100%, but if I remember right, you said, this is a 78 acre piece of property. If you took 20 acres and put 400 people, residents in that 20 acres, I wouldn't have a problem with it because I'm looking at the whole property and the density across the whole property is going to be within my.
I think I probably said that if you put 350 people on 1 acre.
Okay, that's even better.
But something along,
Yeah.
along those lines. Yep.
So that kind of plays into where I'm talking right now is we're going to end up with the same problem possibly that you had concerns with in the past, even though we're looking at it in phases. The other thing that I'm concerned about, if I understood the opening of this hearing, is that it's not being presented as it was before, as two separate items, one being the change of the PUD, the other one being an overlay. This is all one deal. So if the council were to agree on this proposal, but not be in favor of any of the rentals.
We can act on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be part of our motion to say,
Okay.
we'll approve this piece, but not that piece.
Okay. All right.
Will you speak to the project though?
I'm not in
As-
favor
as
of
it
the
is?
overnight rentals. I'm just not.
So
Not the percentage of it. If it was lower percentage, I maybe could live with it, but it's too high.
And then the rest of the project, as it stands?
Well, there are some concerns that have already been brought up about some of the setbacks and the smallness of some of the lots being family friendly. I understand that we have to look at, different income levels and make them available to different income levels. So I'm not going to be a no man just for the sake of saying no. Like the council's already stated, something's going to be built here. We're trying to work through all this. And so overall, I think there's some helpful improvements here from what we've seen in the past, but I still have concerns, as I've already mentioned.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
My name is Roxana Dickey. I live in Horizons West. I'm concerned that they've got those houses, those 9 houses right against Horizons West. Are they just as close as they were in the last proposal? We went through that before. Why are we going through it again? And the recreation area right there on the corner with a barbecue and a horseshoe, that's very close. And you've got to remember that Horizons West is down here in a little gully. And here this building is going up. Why? Why these people here in these 9 houses are going to look right down into the people into Horizons West, right into their houses. And right here, the barbecue pit's going to look right down into those houses. We went through this before. I wish we didn't have to go through it again. They should put them the pit, another place over here by their swimming pool and the houses. They did move them away. And now they do have single living units there, but they are, according to that picture that we just saw, are 2 stories high. I wish they could do something about this because it really does infringe upon our privacy. Thank you for allowing me to talk.
Any questions for Roxanne? Thank you.
Drew, do we have anything that shows that elevation change? I can't picture that, the height of the current property to.
I'm recalling that we,
Well, pretty flat because, yeah, so this way would be going up. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So relatively, the front of the street to here is maybe 4 feet grade on the existing ground today.
I recall conversations where we said that back row of homes that was next to Horizon West was single story so that there wasn't that intrusion. They've agreed to that? Do we have that? Okay.
I was going to wait till public hearing's over, but I can address that real quick. If you guys recall, a year and a half ago, that area that Drew's got pulled up on the screen is actually general plan for medium high. Medium high is 99% of the time multifamily. When our original application came in, it was incredibly different than what you're seeing on the screen. I don't know if you recall, it was actually 6 and 4 plexes along their boundary line. So we have made huge strides, as you can see on Horizons West. If you lateral over from their units to ours, we're the same. Their pad site and ours are now the same. And the developer, the applicant has committed, I don't know if it went in the planning commission notes, from unit 110 down to 115 to be a single level. Or 109, I think it's true. Yeah. Yeah. The ones that are immediately adjacent to the boundary of Horizons West to
To
be
be
a single level.
109, not 108 up on the corner there?
Yeah, 109 to 115.
I think when we talked through planning commission, we committed 109. I don't think 108 came in as a single just because it was a side yard versus a rear.
Is this the same layout that was here last time we saw it on west of Bella Vista?
I want to say yes. These are the 40-foot wide pads. So Councilman Belson, these actually might be bigger. I think I think we were at 157. Now we're 148. I just tried to take a screenshot of our notes and trying to track it all.
Thank you. I'll remind the council, we're worried about this one, not the past one.
Yeah.
That's right. You just had a question about the past.
I know the council was comfortable with what we presented last time, so we didn't narrow anything up on you or add anything in. We're down to 48 units on the east side or the west side. I think that's, I would hope that's
They
the last.
seem confused on the height. You've clarified it. That's the same level. Where's the lady that spoke? Okay.
To affect through, just so I get it straight too, to affect here to here is going to be the 2 feet difference from here to here, elevation, and these are all going to be single story.
Yes.
But I heard her say
Come on up.
level, which may not mean 4 feet higher.
Just be a single level house. He's just talking the contours of the property.
There, if we're talking from back looking into someone's house, we're talking 2 feet up to there, 2 feet higher, but those are only going to be single story houses.
So before we go on to the next, could I ask Mrs. Dickey, does that make sense to you? And is that,
They didn't look like it, right? But we're told that they will be 1-story houses.
We could put that in as part of our.
They have an
Part of our
elevation
PUD.
here that is 1 story.
Yeah, if you look at, and we kind of apologize, what it is the elevations that they're proposing to build has a bonus room scenario. So the one on the very far end, notice how, okay, so look, if you scroll down to just the footprint, we're saying that that's going to be the single level, so the stairs would go away. It wouldn't. Now, Drew, if you can go back to the left. Keep going to the other. So if you look down below, see how this one's got that floating bonus room in the bedroom upstairs? It wouldn't have that. It would just be that far
So that
one.
would bring the elevation down.
Yep, as a single level. Yeah, because that bonus room it kind of sits up in the ceiling.
go ahead, come
Yeah,
forward,
yeah.
would you?
What she's asked, I'll clarify it for you. She's asking what the offset in the rear yard would
Oh,
be
right.
between that, and that would be what, Drew? 10 feet. 10 feet?
I get your question.
Yeah, that's the requirement.
All right, sir, come on ahead.
Sorry, we keep bouncing you off the mic there.
My name is Tom Shockley. I live in Bella Vista. I have just two concerns that have kind of come to mind. And number one is with the vacation rentals, no matter where you go, Santa Clara, here in Washington, wherever you go, the biggest complaint is parking. And you'll have a vacation rental that maybe is allotted for 6 people. Well, you'll have probably 10 people in there and everybody has to drive a car and they all want to park by the front door. And parking is a big problem wherever they have vacation rentals and where they have a multitude of them, parking is a big problem. The other question I have is on 1100 East. You know, we were talking on those private streets, they have a 20-foot setback on the front to the garage. Put that street in there on both sides, the north or the east and the west. you aren't going to have no 20-foot setback. So you're going to, okay, a street to be built in there with less than 20 feet from those buildings where people are living, and it's going to be not their garage, it's going to be the back of their house or the side of their house. I think that's a big concern that you need to look at when you start talking about putting that street in, is what kind of setbacks are you going to have for everybody in the end? Because I know on the east side, those trailers right there, they're backed right up against where that right of way, or I don't even know if it's a dedicated right of way is, but you aren't going to have any setbacks at all. And I think that's a big concern. That's all. Thank you.
Good points.
My name's Bob Samar, live in Bella Vista. Just wanted to encourage you when you look at this layout, and I know I sent an email a while back to some of you, to take a look at Bluff View, which is about 5 miles north of here, and take a look at their layout and this layout. And I sent pictures in that email, but what you find in Bluff View, and this looks an awful lot like that layout. What I find is there's no green spaces, there's no sidewalks, there's parking all along the street. And why is that? Because the driveway is one parking space. The garage is a storage area for everybody. I didn't see one open garage that wasn't full of stuff, no cars. And then that was at 2:30 in the afternoon. So the people that are working and come home with their car adds another car. There were cars lining the streets. There were garbage cans and recycle cans that had to been stuffed between the units. They were overflowing. They were in front. They were all visible all along the streets. Garbage overflowing depending on the day. I don't remember what day it was now, but it just looked awful. And I don't think we want that kind of look here. And if you're not careful about how you set this up, it is going to look like Bluff View. And it was ugly. And I don't think it'd be attractive for anybody else to come here if they saw that. Just my
Thank you.
input.
Good points.
My name is Ron Romney, and I'm a resident of Bella Vista. I'd like to point out a few things specifically about the project as it's being presented here. The first thing that I heard is that they're requesting approval under the new proposed PUD-R ordinance.
It's not proposed, it's passed.
And when did that happen?
January? Yeah, a couple months ago.
How do we find out what that ordinance says? Because I was on the website last night and this morning again, searched for PUD-R, could find nothing. So there's no way.
Is it on Sterling yet?
It probably hasn't been codified yet.
Well, okay, without that information, we can't.
It's not
tell.
much, it's not a whole lot different than what the PUD already was. We added some language for different, we broke it up into 5 different zones.
The PDRs.
And then added a little bit of specific language to each. So it's still.
Probably the
pretty
biggest one in
similar to
this
what
one
it
was
is.
that we required a 20-foot driveway, a front yard, so it was spelled out that we had those types. That's probably the biggest change that I could think of in our PDR.
Multifamily had some additional rules on
Yeah, the
setbacks.
multifamily, I'm just thinking the PDR.
Okay. So once again, without having seen that, it's difficult for us to, as citizens to see whether there's compliance with that or not.
Well,
We can't,
I
we
can tell
can't
you
do
that there would have to be compliance for it to fly through.
Right.
So, but we certainly can make sure that you get a copy of that. And like I said, we've got a couple of weeks that if there's concerns there,
Okay,
we
fine.
welcome emails and, or phone calls or.
Now, it's stated right here in the proposal that the density ratio of what's being proposed to us tonight is 7.4 dwelling units per acre. If you take, and if you approve that, what you're saying is that that's what can be set for essentially the entire project. How do you argue not having a density any less than that? If you take that 7.4 units per acre and multiply it by the 47 developable acres in this project. Now, not all of the land is developable, but it's been stated many times that 47 acres is the developable property. That yields 348 units in this on the developable part of the property. That has been rejected on a number of occasions. Okay, a number of occasions. The density that high.
What I'm seeing on this application, and I'm not trying to argue with it, but at least what I'm reading is phase one area, 29.21 acres and a density of 3.8.
That's what I figured as well. Drew, can you confirm that?
I'm reading from paragraph 2 under the staff review memo, and it says the density ratio for this proposed developable portion of the project is 7.4 dwelling units per acre.
I know, but we're reading for the table on the exhibit. So obviously there's it needs to be cleared up, right?
Okay.
Which document is that, Troy? Do you have
That's
that
in
one?
the staff review.
Paragraph 2
Second
under.
paragraph down.
Well, again, that would seem to, what I just said, the 348 units would seem to square with, again, we're not talking about the whole thing, but what's been presented as a whole before, because that's how high the density has been, and several of you have said. It's part of the refusal the last time was that the density was too high. And it wasn't even as high as 348.
I guess that's the one thing I would take is I would think that this group would know this council is not going to approve that then. I mean,
Okay.
I think
Well-
I think the status has been told it ain't going there. So this concern that keeps coming back, I kind of have a hard time with saying, look, this council's made it clear we ain't going there.
So
Okay.
Drew, in your review notes, it says, well, and even this, it says unit count, 111 total units for 29 acres, but then you restate it down in your background at 7.4. So
You take 29.21, you take 111 divided by the acres, it's 3.8.
So
Well-
we've established that we're all better at math.
So that's, I could understand the concern that comes out there, but I would hope that as citizens that you have enough confidence in this council, that you said, look, this council's seen those numbers and they've rejected them. And so I would hope that you've got some confidence that this council's saying, okay, we're not going there. So that's
Well,
why they've come
yeah.
back with saying this, okay, if you won't go there, can we start here? And maybe we can find something that you can go.
I'm only pointing out to you what I was able to read from the
One
paper
thing-
and what
I
I'm
guess I'm
not,
just trying to
I'm
clarify.
not understanding that.
What I do appreciate about this is seeing how a lot of things have met according to your concerns. It's good to see these resolved as we go. So I'd appreciate hearing these until we've reached the concerns.
That's fine. It's stated in the presentation here that all of the requested items for the past denials has been met in this presentation as it's being presented. I would argue that that's not exactly correct. Okay, there have been some things that have been done, such as, well, there's not going to be a street running along the border of Horizons West, and the other thing, there will be single-story units along where it faces Horizons West. But what
isn't there is what has been required by the council, said that 1100 East, a development plan has to be in effect before the PUD is approved. In the proposal, it says, well, we'll make it a part of the plat approval and that kind of thing, but there's language, and we can go back to the minutes and we can look at it. And so that's not being proposed in this particular thing. And another particular thing that has been discussion in the past that we seem to have thought was resolved is that there would be nice wide streets and there would be sidewalks throughout the development. There are no sidewalks shown in any of this drawing. If you look at the presentation of the 34-foot private street that's right there on the thing, which if you approve this, you would be approving that particular thing. It does not show sidewalks.
Well, it also doesn't show sidewalks up Bella Vista Drive, and there is sidewalk. What they're showing is right of way. There's sidewalks up Bella Vista Drive, correct?
Yes, that would lead me to another point of what we're having here. You look at the landscape plan that they've submitted, and it appears that they're planting trees right in the middle of the sidewalk. Along the thing. So, and you can see right there that there's a walking trail going right along the edge of Bonnie Lane. Okay, so again, the same point that you raised, do we have a walking trail down the middle of the sidewalk or across the middle of the driveways on the other side? But here, so is it a sidewalk or is it a walking trail?
Well, they're showing a right of way, and a right of way includes sidewalks. So I'm not trying to argue with that. I'm just showing, they're just showing a blanket right of way, and the right of way includes sidewalks. If you go to Bella Vista, they're showing the right of way, but the right of way includes sidewalks. And if I pull up the aerial, in fact, let me try to figure out how I pull the right aerial up, because I'll show you. There we go. Let me see.
Well,
I just want to bring this up. CO conference room? No.
You got it up right here, Councilman.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you pull it up, the right of way actually includes from the outside to the outside.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to clarify that.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, when they show the right of way, there's room for that to include the sidewalks. Is that right?
The drawing shows 34 foot of asphalt, okay, and it shows no sidewalk. Look at the other drawing where it shows the sidewalk on it.
On the private street side is different. Down Bonnie Lane, it's showing a 50-foot city street or 50-foot right of way, which is 35 feet of asphalt, curb gutter and sidewalk on either side. That's what it is. So,
Fine, that answers the question of Bonnie Lane. It doesn't answer the question of sidewalks on all of the other private streets. The drawing doesn't show sidewalks being included on it. Okay. According to the construction and design specifications that are approved by the city and on file with the city, when it shows a drawing, it indicates where the sidewalks are going to be. Well, and the developer testified, stood right at this podium, and on one occasion said there will be sidewalks throughout this, and there will be wide streets. I mean, the minutes are right here, and we can go read it. But the drawing that he's presenting to you shows no sidewalks. It shows sidewalks for the particular indication of how 1100 East would be developed, but not for the rest of it. One other point, or a couple of other points, is the old PUD statute, and you said that the new one is essentially unchanged for that, says that all things in a PUD development must be in accordance with the land use requirements of the general plan. Okay, the majority of this portion that's being proposed, that's essentially south of Bonnie Lane, is in the general plan designated as medium density, which I guess we've corrected that by, if it's not 7.4, it's 3.8, so I guess that complies with it. Okay, it does. But one thing that doesn't seem to comply is over here in the corner where they're proposing their horseshoe pits and that kind of thing. In the general plan map, that's shown as open space. The open space regulation for the city says that if you're planning on putting an improvement on anything that's designated open space, you need to go through a conditional use process, and they haven't done that for this particular piece of property. I know that's just a little tiny portion of it, but again, if we've got rules, we should be complying with those rules. Okay. Again, and then the proposal in the beginning is that it's a PUD that replaces the old PUD. And the PUD is only this portion. That leaves the rest of it, okay, as the old PUD. So now if you approve this, you've created an orphan part, okay, that's which would be south of what you see here to the right on Bonnie Lane. We don't know what's going to happen with that. The developer could sell, well, he doesn't own it, so he couldn't sell it. So we don't know what's going to go in there. It's just an orphan parcel. And clear back 2 years ago, we said we're not going to have this mixed and fractured development all over. We're going to see the whole thing. We're going to see conceptually what it's about. But again, that's left as an orphan, okay, to do it. And you said in the minutes of November 5th, 2017, when a PUD was again proposed for only a part of the thing, that if a PUD approves, that means that the rest of the project goes away, okay, that it doesn't exist.
Troy, you get quoted almost as much as Yogi Berra.
Well, if you'll bear with me, I will read it.
I don't think it's pertinent to what his quote. We've heard him quote lots of things, and that's all pretty pertinent.
Councilmember Belliston clarified if this position is approved at this point, the rest of the development does not exist. That's from the minute. So
that would be true, because if whatever you approve is all you approve.
Well,
so that would be
again,
statutory
okay,
legal, correct?
We leave it with an orphan part there. Yeah. Let's talk about.
Come back and be the mini golf. That's what it is, right? That the PUD today is a mini golf course. So it's a mini resort there. That's what the existing PUD is.
One other point that I'd like to make sure that the council is taking into account is the hillside ordinance that exists in the city of Washington. There is a map on the city website about where the hillside ordinance comes into play in this particular thing. And the hillside ordinance, the hillside overlay for that covers a substantial portion of that. If we could see this thing, I can demonstrate it. Can we project that? I'm sorry? You can read the designation of the streets there, but you see where it does. And so
what you're showing is that everybody up in Bella Vista live in the hillside ordinance.
I understand that, but that was approved 12 years ago. Okay, and so it's a moot point at this particular time. Okay, it's a moot point. And this came into effect after that was approved, is my understanding. So, I mean,
I understand keeping out of the slopes.
Okay. If a piece of property or development falls within the hillside overlay ordinance, there are a number of special steps that have to be taken. Okay, things that have to be presented in the site plan when it comes to for approval before the council. And so far we haven't seen any of those things, such as a topographical map which shows exactly where the 20% or the 30% slope line is, and to make sure that none of the projected buildings or building pads or whatever it is extend beyond that. So again, we're talking about this particular property. Here's a big question mark in our minds that isn't answered with what's being presented here, and we feel that it should be.
I think the council, at least for the most part, is pretty aware of that. In fact, that's part of the reason that it's stayed in a PUD, because if we straight zoned it, there's a lot of those slopes that they could mitigate and bulldoze and put houses on. And that's part of why we said we want to work with you and keep you off the hillside and in the valley.
I understand
that's
all
part
of
of why
that,
this
but
process is where it's at, is trying to mitigate sites.
I'm asking that the rules are on the books that call for
This council's
certain
aware of them.
for certain things to be presented, and we don't see them being presented here. That's all there is to it.
That's mainly because they're not impacting those
Well,
hillsides.
in this proposal, and we're talking about this proposal, I don't see them on that
Yeah,
hillside.
they're not impacting it. That's why they're not seeing it.
They've actually, if you blow up their map, they've got a line that shows where that hillside line is.
And how has that
This
been?
portion of it's out.
How has that been verified?
You don't get verified.
What? Well, will be. We keep hearing about.
Usually coming off as
will
surveys and
be.
engineering. I mean, that's what we have to
We
rely
keep
on.
hearing about will be, and the regulations, the PUD regulation says, as part of the site plan, that's supposed to be presented. I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
And I don't see it.
Well,
okay?
when we see a line on there, we have to anticipate that line's been verified by an engineer. That's
Well-
what we're going by.
Okay, then
It's a valid concern.
It
We
seems
appreciate
like
bringing those up.
you've already decided that any argument that we bring is.
No, that's.
Well, I
the arguments at this point are, I guess we're showing you the arguments are being taken. This council's aware of those arguments.
Just know that we take everything and have continued to take this very seriously. Everything about the density, your concerns about the hillsides. I don't think there's anything that this council has taken lightly. So I appreciate your concern. We
One
continue to
last
follow.
point, and that is you see up in the corner there where they present the drawings of what the outlines of the streets will be. The proposal for 1100 East is that it be a 31-foot wide asphalt road.
On this proposal, I don't see any proposal for 1100 East. There is no proposal.
It says 1100 East Street.
Well, look at what we're looking at. There is no 1100. That may be something that's out on this. But if you look at there is no 1100.
Yeah, the very top.
I understand, but part of what we're looking at as a project,
We're in the orange here.
yeah, we're not looking at 11. There's nothing that we're
Which
dealing
is-
with is 1100.
Which is problematic because we, in the past, we've always included 1100 East, and something will have to be done with 1100 East before they can go past the next phase. But
Before they go through this phase.
is that
Yeah, 30
correct? I thought
30
they
units.
could go not this phase. Excuse me, not this phase. This where are we at? Preliminary. Preliminary plat.
The recommendation in the memo
Right.
is that it be that the build out of 1100 East be part of the approval process. But again, it shows a 31-foot wide asphalt street being in there, and that fits with, as I read the construction design guidelines as published by the city, that doesn't correlate with any of the design proposals. This, if we're reading the definitions correctly, this would be a residential collector street, which the design construction criteria for the city requires that it be a 42-foot asphalt drive. So if you approve this, we're cutting the developer here a real great break, okay, and allowing him to not comply with the rules.
mandated this developer and the other developers, and that's what the city owns?
The city doesn't own this property.
What the city owns.
The city doesn't own that right of way. It's not belonging to the city. It's privately owned. The owner of that property is sitting right here in the audience. And we've had a conversation with him, and he said that a proposal has been made to him. If I understood what he said, he says that the proposal that was made to him certainly would benefit this developer, but he's not sure that he wants to do that. I don't want to speak for him. He can speak for himself if he cares to do that. But it's not owned by the city. Again, I'm simply saying we've got the rules, and there is a solution to that. If someone will think outside of the box a little bit, okay, where we could comply with the rules and we could get it all done. Now, I'll answer your question. Am I in favor of this particular thing as it is presented? No, I am not. Because, once again, it's the same density as has been proposed before that was rejected soundly by the council. Okay, nothing has changed. All they've done is just left off part of the drawing. Okay, that's it.
But the part of the drawing that they did leave off was higher density. So I'm just interested to hear what your take is on the current density and the project the way it is.
Well, it meets the requirements of the thing, but again, I don't see how we can separate this, just as we pointed out before. We said in before, this is one PUD. It's not a phase, it's a particular PUD by itself. That leaves the others to be developed by a PUD. Now, yes, that allows you some controls, but you're still going to end up, okay, getting too much of a distance.
At some point, we'll be presented with other phases and other portions.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully that they won't build this one out and then say, well, we're done, and then leave again an orphan piece of property back hidden behind the rest with no access. Hopefully, you're right, it will be. Yeah. Okay.
How do you feel about the PUD ordinance as a whole? The city council has looked at it as a way to get more open space, more parks, because straight zoning doesn't allow for that. And it's been the thinking of this council, which started before me, that this gave us more flexibility to get in some of these areas just a little bit better developments.
I understand that completely. Yeah. And I personally, and with the discussions that we've had with a number of the neighbors, we're not opposed to the PUD process. As a matter of fact, I'm not for sure, but we proposed that the fractured zoning that they were trying to get, the one piece of it was going to be R3, and another piece was going to be R8, another piece was going to be R10. And we went through that whole discussion, and we suggested, well, it's currently a PUD. Why don't you leave it a PUD? Because that allows more discussion about things. It allows more things to be brought to the table beforehand, not waiting till the plat process or the preliminary plat process, but to be brought beforehand. The old PUD regulation has a list of 24 or 26 items that are supposed to be submitted in the site plan when it comes to the planning commission, when it comes to the city council. If all of those things were presented for all of us to see here tonight in this proposal, and it we could see very clearly that it's all in a conformance and in compliance with that, there wouldn't be any argument. How could we argue with it? But we don't see a topographical map. We don't see a written statement showing how this fits into the overall plan that the city has. Okay, we don't see how it fits into the pride and the heritage that's listed in the plan. Okay, we don't see where sidewalks aren't being illustrated on the site plan here, and that goes against the brand new mobility plan. It goes against the thing that we just read about in the city newsletter, where Councilman Granger's asking that everything be approved with greater sidewalks. It doesn't jive with the 2010 plan that had the city that says all residential developments in the city will have sidewalks. Okay, and we argue about the right of way and what includes and what it doesn't. But when you go to the design specifications in the thing and it shows sidewalks, you get an illustration similar to the one that's above the one there in the corner, which does in fact show a sidewalk. So
Okay, yeah, we've heard that, Mr. Romney. We've heard.
Okay,
Anything new?
No, but I appreciate the depth of your thinking about this from
No,
all of you. I want to
certainly
say
can
that.
appreciate
Thank
that.
you
Like I
for
said,
the
we've heard sidewalks several times, and that certainly is a concern. Absolutely. Any
all
other
we would
questions for
ask
Mr.
is
Romney?
that we have things clearly delineated for us to be able to see that there is in fact full compliance with the regulations as they are on the books. Okay, that we don't have to rely upon discretion or some interpretation of it, that it be clear. And if it calls for that particular thing to be provided for us, why can't we have it to review and to be able for the citizens to vet it? So
Good
thank you very
points.
much.
Good points.
You can see that we've killed a lot of paper. My files, and it only includes
I promise I won't take much time. It's getting late. But a couple
If you
of
would state
things-
your name, please, for the record.
Lorena Curry, and I live in Horizon West. And looking at this, the first thing I seen was the street we were promised down the east side, the fence is gone. It's not there to give us more than the 10 feet from the house to the fence. They took out the trailer and boat parking, et cetera, and put in a barbecue pit for everybody to have their parties right there where we're trying to have our afternoon nap or going to bed early. You got to realize we are older people in that park. And
I was going to say, you just need to go around the wall and join them.
I can't climb the fence anymore.
Well, I was going to say, maybe what we need to do is have a walkway between the two.
But anyhow, that is not a good idea. That should be over here where all the housing is.
You know, you can set time limits on parks. I'm probably older than you, but I'd love to have a place to take my grandkids.
Well, that would be nice, but
And it's a
not
good
right now
family-friendly
backyard.
thing.
And then another thing that I have not heard mentioned is there's going to be grass planted. There's going to be trees planted. There's going to be a lot of cement. There's going to be a lot of pavement. Where is the water going? When they water, we cannot take one more gallon of water on Horizon West there. We're built on blue clay. There has already been problems with houses sinking, having to be shored up, driveways sinking. We cannot, I mean, every drop of water has got to be taken care of. What is happening there?
They would be required through the development, when they get into the construction drawings, they would be required to control their own water.
How are they going to do it?
That's why we have.
He's going to make sure.
Most of that is,
And he's
there's actually
good.
the storm drain now that comes along that back side. That would basically convey
But it's
water
still
away.
sloped towards Horizon West. You said there's a 2-foot rise there. Or
No,
2
you know,
feet
it collects here,
lower.
it collects here. In fact, right behind, well, through Horizons West is where that drainage, if I recall now, comes and then hits the back side of it and runs over to 300 East.
Yes,
So
there's
basically,
that.
this property this is their property that's on. So that would all be put in a pipe and piped
Even
out to the
this
storm
clear
drain.
from
It
the
becomes
front
part of the
from-
city's storm drain system.
From the telegraphed houses up here, every bit
From
of
everything
that
in their project.
will slope towards.
They will collect it, send it in the pipe in the storm drain system, correct?
Okay, because we really can't handle any water. We people that never had water is now
Obviously,
pumping
in
water.
lawns, the only
Uh.
thing that they will get was what runs off, what sinks into the lawn, sinks into the lawn.
Exactly, and that's what we don't
But
want.
Well, but right now you've got bare dirt that's catching everything and sinking in. So really it should help you
Well,
because
I'm-
you're going to have cement and asphalt and those things that now is collecting water is not going to collect water in the future.
Uh-huh.
So it should help some.
Some. Look at that really closely, will you? When the plans come in for that, please look at it. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one more question for you. I show the score 2-2. In would you care to make a Yogi Berra quote to bring the score up? I'd like to see Yogi Berra win over Troy tonight. I'm sorry.
I'll share that. I knew Mrs. Sister Curry's, Mrs. Curry knew me when I was just a little tiny shaver. She was my neighbor just over the wall. So we've been good friends for lots of, I thought when I see you walk, it's like, I know her from somewhere. And then you said your name, it's like, hey. It's been lots of years ago. Lots of years ago. It's good to see
Thank
you
you.
again.
Appreciate it, Lorena.
And now she's my neighbor. My name's Ann Funk, and I'm in Horizons West.
And Funk.
The last Ann Funk.
Thank you.
The last time when this was not approved, it was not approved because of a high density. I would ask the city council to, this looks like high density to me. I do appreciate the fact that they're making that single next to Horizons West, single family or single story. It looks very close. Their line looks very close to what would be the backyards along that fence. Also, everyone I have talked to that lives on that back row in that corner is very opposed to having the amenities right there. I'm wondering if they couldn't be moved over in back of those other houses or someplace else. We know that it's going to be noisy. We know some people would like to have a park there, but I don't think it's a good place to put it for our well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann. Okay, just a good question.
As well as developer. How does this comply with Americans with Disabilities Act? Tom Shockley.
Is it the seats you're complaining about that you have to sit?
There's a long-standing joke amongst the city council
About the
that we have
seats you have to sit
that we
in.
all hate these seats out here. And so she was wondering if you were referring to the seats.
Mild form
because
of torture.
Being part of the American
America.
Disabilities Act.
Americans with Disabilities Act that's federal law.
Certainly.
And there's a lot of things that don't comply there.
Well,
When
everything.
you're talking residential, it doesn't fall under the ADA. Commercial certainly
When it
does.
comes to vacation rentals, it will.
That's a good point.
And that's, I just thought of that when Mr. Romney was talking about sidewalks and sidewalks and thing. Same way down that street 1100 West. That's got to comply.
It's a good point. We'll have to look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Drew had to go get a plug for his iPad, so that. He's about to die.
So am I.
I'm almost out of chocolate.
My name is Wayne Langford. I was reluctant to come up because we just moved into Bella Vista on December 15th, so we're probably your newest Washington resident here.
Forgive me, is it Lane Whiteford?
Wayne Langford.
Langford. Thank you. Yes.
And
I just want to know.
I disapprove of the project because of the vacation rentals. If we had known that vacation rentals were planned for there, we would not have paid the price we paid for the property that we bought. It will degrade the area, and I just would like to see that made into family units. And that's my feeling. Thank you.
Hey, can I ask you before you leave there, do you feel like, in your opinion, any amount of vacation rentals would be appropriate there or would?
No,
Zero?
none. It's not appropriate at all. It's set back. I don't even know why the developer would want to put them there. There's Coral Canyon that has vacation rentals available. They're not filled. I don't have a lot of experience. I just have lived near them in Northern California. I wanted to escape that kind of congestion, and I'd be very disappointed to see to see that. And I'd just like to see family units in there. Those could be really nice, small houses for families. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Nope, Mr. Romney, no, nope. Only one time. Only one time. No. No, we're not, this is not a rebuttal process.
In all fairness, normally we allow
this isn't
3
a court
minutes.
Case. Yeah, this isn't a court case. It's a chance.
In all
You
fairness.
stated your points, your concerns. And so we're at that point. We're about ready to have the developer come up and he can address some of those concerns. And then we'll go ahead and close our public hearing. So if there's
Thank
no
you.
one else, we'll go ahead and invite the developer to come forward and address some of those concerns that you may have heard.
Council Ward, you gotta get late early out here. Yogi Bear, I think was late early out here.
Well, whether
He's
you
over here
think you're wrong or you
searching
think
Yogi
you're
Berra
right.
quotes.
I would like more information about whether or not we have ADA requirements for short-term rentals. I think that's information we need to have.
That's a fair conversation when we discuss the overnight rental. It may be that the overnight rental is not approved and then it's a moot point.
No,
So,
it's just a good point to bring up. I hope we don't lose it.
No, I've got a note here on it as well. So go ahead, Brandy, if you're representing the developer.
Good evening, Brandy Walker, representing the applicant. Thanks, council members and neighbors for the good discussion. I think it's always interesting to come back before you on this one. I don't know if you guys, there was so much said, if there's something to just cut right to the chase, rather than me just ramble on like you've heard in the past. If you have a question for me, let's.
Well, I think one of the big concerns that we heard was about the sidewalk. So if you'll address the sidewalk issue. We heard about 1100 East is a big issue. Those are the main ones. The overnight rental, I don't know if there's anything that really.
Possibly the movement of the.
Yeah,
Well, we
had a
could have-
concern with the
Humanity
amount.
and further in.
So mainly those three,
keep me
those
in order,
three
but yeah.
key components.
So I'll start with the sidewalk. I think Drew and staff did a great job on kind of pointing it out. We've worked with Public Works. The 1100 East section that you see up there in the corner that Drew zoomed in on, that is what the future of 1100 East will look like. If you get on your city's mass transportation plan, it's incorrect to say 1100 East South of Bella Vista is an arterial road, because it's not. If you pull up your own transportation plan, 1100 East ends at Telegraph. So the road going south on 1100 East would strictly be a residential normal street. Yeah, which is shown on your transportation plan. Pink is your arterial. It doesn't go there. So this is what we've worked with Public Works heavily on. Buster in the past, Mike, everybody, we've worked this section out. They feel it is more than adequate due to the fact there is no driveway access on 1100 East. No, there will be no intersections, no anything. That is fenced off on one side with Winter Haven, and the other side is the back side of the storage units that was represented here tonight. So there will never be another access on 1100 East.
who is Sunbird Development then?
That is Winter Haven. Yeah, it's platted with a different name than they represent on the ground. Yeah. So in an effort to keep the road away from Winter Haven, we've put the sidewalk on their side of the street, so it allows some flux. There's a ton of history on that right of way. It is owned by a gentleman. It's privately owned, who is the developer of Ridgepoint. And so there's a agreement, not in place. There's 1,000 conversations and down the road. The plan is done. The plan is done. The city's been done. The HOA with Winter Haven's been done. What's not done is an inked signed financial agreement. That's left. It won't be done until we know what we're building, to what we can get approved. But we've worked it out with the intersection offset. It's been worked out with Public Works. Everything's done. So when and if what we get approved, then that's when financials come into play between the three landowners.
Would that impact the ability of putting a stoplight on that intersection if it is not continued as an arterial?
No.
Okay.
Like Mike pointed out, rooftops make stoplights. We did a traffic study. We've got a full-fledged traffic study, ginormous one that was done by the applicant, even though it's not required at this point, just to see where things were at. And we did it in the beginning, so we would have done with a higher, I think the traffic study was done with the apartments even in there. We had apartments on here at one point. So
It's changed. It's
Yeah,
reduced in the density.
dramatically. So to address the sidewalk issue, the reason 34-foot public street or private street shown on here is because it's not your guys' standard street, because it's the private street where the developer owns and maintains it. So the public tax dollars don't go to the street.
And that's all of 1100 would be private.
Nope, 1100 is public. It's the one right above. The reason 1100 is shown is because it's not a normal cross section. And this is the one that we've agreed upon with Public Works. The private ones are the ones that we're showing application for as the 34-foot one. So Bonnie Lane is a 50-foot public street, which will have sidewalk both sides. We're proposing to eliminate maybe a portion of the sidewalk and put a larger meandering walking trail. Whether we need to jump it to the other side of the road because that's more fluid. If you go further to the west, Drew, sorry. So if you notice those units, 116, 117, 132, 133, how they're kind of different angled and they're veering away from our private street. That setback is larger than the standard 10-foot setback just because there's easements in place. So that trail could actually jump to that side of the street. It'd make more sense to actually move it to that side of the street since there's a larger gap there. The city, and then it would connect to the trail going out to 300. Yeah, and no driveways, and it would connect to the trail to 300 East. So we have no problem moving that walking trail around, you know, if that's more comfortable. And then to clarify too, city code standard, regardless of zone, whatever it may be, requires 20 feet to a garage.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's kind of a given. That's why it's not stated, but I mean, we could definitely have it in there if the comfortable level is there on that.
So going back to the private streets, are there sidewalks as part of those?
The streets within phase one, we are not proposing a sidewalk
Okay, so
on
there is no sidewalks for clarification.
with this application.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So all the private streets have no sidewalks involved.
Correct.
I appreciate the clarification that there are no threeplexes.
They're all threeplexes.
Sorry, no fourplexes. They are threeplexes. Forgive me.
I don't know if you have to, yeah, and to get compared to Bluffview, as much as I want to not admit this,
Right.
that was my project back in the day. In fact, Bella Vista was my project in 2005. I did your subdivisions up there. So, but our unit is substantially wider than the Bluffview. So our attached product is not what was built at Bluffview. Theirs was very narrow, and to accommodate a two-car garage was difficult for them because their garages are a lot narrower. So our units are wider at 28 feet.
Can you help me see a little bit clearer? One of the most common things brought up in this public hearing was creating a family atmosphere. In which ways do you think you've addressed that within this development?
Well, it's kind of interesting because we were actually pushed to go 55 and older community because we wanted it to be quiet. And so to say they wanted family is kind of a blind side tonight because we were told it was supposed to be a
55
quiet
and
community.
older.
Yeah. So we can, we were just talking with
Yeah,
Stephen
just,
James
I
are
mean,
here.
we just kind of
curious.
caution people
Yeah.
going back on the history of stuff. There's so much history with
Yeah.
this. It's really not fair for us to pick and choose what we remember about what somebody may
Fair
have
enough.
said
So this
before.
is
If you're trying to
designed
save
as-
family, I mean, we don't need this much open space. We don't need this much amenities. So if that barbecue pit doesn't seem conducive to those neighbors, I don't think, I mean, we don't need it. It's just because we were applying for short-term rental, we tried to space out the amenities a little bit and try to find a pocket area. So these guys weren't going clear over to the main. They had a little small
So
spot.
what would you do with that piece?
If it
then?
was moved somewhere else.
Nothing.
Just
Just left alone. Yeah.
okay.
We would not put more units in there, no. The slope line that keeps getting referred to, when we did the general plan amendment, your guys' GIS mapping for some reason has got a weird shift on it.
Okay.
If you look at your general plan, but Drew tried to point it
Mr.
out.
Sandoval figured that out.
It was pointed out by Commissioner Swell. That's your slope line, right in here.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank
what you're
you.
looking at is a topography map. Those dash line you're seeing, that's topography, that's topo, those are 2-foot contours.
Thank you. So the topography map is included within this design.
There's your hillside.
Thank you. I appreciate the hillside designation in the map.
I understand. I mean, some people don't see the mapping, so I apologize if that's a little unclear. And then what, Councilman Turk, did you have?
I think that covered the main.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Well, we had
to
questions
something
about
else.
garbage as well in relationship to other developments similar to this,
Yeah.
about keeping control of
I-
what's put out.
I think that goes back a little bit to the Bluffview project. Their garages are very small. I don't think a lot of them utilize the garage for that. And where we're doing single family homes on the west side of Bella Vista, Bella Vista Drive, those will have 2-car garages and they're wide. They're a standard PUD pad.
You know, storage has been brought up about that. A lot of times those garages in these small units turn into storage areas.
Absolutely. And I don't know, the applicants talked to how we have 78 boat stalls there. That's
At the bottom, right?
yeah, that parking that was included
Right.
is way more than adequate for what we have here. So they talked about, you could turn a portion into storage.
The issues at Bluffview is they're not 2-car garages. They're one and a
They're 2.
quarter.
Yeah.
Okay, they're 2.
You gotta have a
For your
really
Prius.
small
You
car.
can't pull 2 cars.
A car and a motorcycle.
Motorcycle.
And you don't have room in the driveway's not a full 2-car width. And so, that,
In
this
these,
has.
So you would
whether
consider-
you can see it or not, this has significantly more parking than Bluffview.
So one of the things I'm getting from your consideration is you'd consider possibly integrating storage into those areas down there because you have so much parking. That'd be a great place to put a little
Depending
quick
on where the
storage
need is
thing,
at.
put things in.
if it's a boat storage need or if it's a storage unit need or, what the residents need.
I've
Yeah.
seen few
Those are great.
places with smaller homes that couldn't use some storage area. Now,
That is
I would,
impressive.
I just because I'm curious, even in Bella Vista, have you ever wished there was a storage unit close by? I'm not even advocating this. I'm just asking.
Just down a little bit.
Okay. Oh, all right. Point made. Point made. Thank you.
Question asked and answered.
Bam. Received.
So maybe can you direct some more comments towards the sidewalks? I agree with, I realize it's private and you're not required, but it certainly does aid in developments and aid in the way that they mature and the way and who is interested in them when they are walkable and can accommodate families.
And space for the garbage cans, because in those garages, there's not. No, there's really not. You can't pull a car in and put the garbage can in there and do that at the same time often.
I just wanted if you wanted to have a chance to answer either of those 2 questions, or to address those.
With
I think she's, go ahead.
I can. I don't know. We're just so tight on space with the where Bella Vista hinges this to Horizons West. Where the plan that we're at and doing single family now versus how we had just the footprint that they're trying to fit on those.
Brandy, just the one question I would have for you, if you go back, Drew, to the east, along Bonnie Lane, where we've got the trail here, but all of a sudden we lose that where you've got driveway accesses coming onto Bonnie
We
Lane.
were trying, that's why we jumped it up and came over because we've got that, you can see the area behind those units.
Yeah, that's,
It's really flat. It's a really good usable area, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's a flat landscapable area. So then rather than there's a couple places, I'm a runner, so I've ran literally every square inch of trail in our area and I love it. But there's a couple places, especially like out in Ivans, where the driveways cross the trail and it's not totally desirable because if you get
but
the
because that's a public street, there still would be a sidewalk
There- yes,
along that as well
absolutely.
too.
There
So-
is a sidewalk
So you'd
both
have the
sides. Mm-hmm.
sidewalk that they could stay on that walkway and then, but we'd have driveways coming
Correct.
across like a normal street. And then the trail would be up here.
Mhm.
Okay.
So Bonnie Lane will have sidewalk both sides. That road you're looking at right there, there will be sidewalk both sides of that street. Correct.
And I think one of the other things that hasn't been addressed, has been brought up repeatedly, is the vacation rentals. And the planning commission had concerns about that. The residents have had concerns about that.
Well, we appreciate you guys. I know the you guys have had great discussion amongst yourself and you guys have taken a lot of time to kind of educate yourself and we appreciate that. I can have maybe, I don't know if James wants to get up. He's trying not to, but he has a lot of good insight on it. So.
James Jessup, I represent the developer. I own a couple of these nightly rentals up in Ivory Homes, Sienna Canyon. Through President's Day weekend, I blocked out 2 weeks for that. I have a management company. This subdivision is put together, like Troy has commented how these should be put together, where you have to have a management, an outside management company managing them. So we can go in and we can block out our dates and we can go stay in these units. I stayed through President's Day weekend to just see what the feel was. Now I've stayed 2 other weekends outside of it. During President's Day weekend, there are cars there. There are people in the pools. There is a need for the boat and trailer parking, but there are not cars parked out on the road in Sienna Canyon. It's larger trucks with boats. That's what's parked out there. That is the problem with that development. During the weeks that it's not busy, that's the quietest neighborhood you'll ever find. It's way quieter than mine over in White Sage. It's crickets in there. And I think, well, I know that these guys will understand once it's put in how much quieter this development will be than a regular non-nightly rental neighborhood will be in this spot here. There will be full-time residents living in these houses with kids. I mean, and we do want family environment. This is going to be a very busy family environment. The other side on the over by Horizons West, I would say would be a better family environment. But the townhome project, it's a good nightly rental project if it's put together right. Troy's brought up at several points, parking and management. Those are your 2 big things. But what a nightly rental project does is it brings the value up in that neighborhood. It does. It targets a different customer. Most of these customers, like us with houseboats in Powell, we want a houseboat down there, but we can't afford it. So they'll buy it and then they'll subsidize it, but with nightly rentals with these management companies. Now you have an HOA managing all of the landscape area, but now you have a management company managing the inside of every one of these units. So you get double management on this. And during the weeks where it's not, when it's your 320 days a year, these neighborhoods are very quiet.
Well, and you refer to when it's done right, and I suspect you're correct. If it's done right, if you have the right management company, you have the right rules in place, none of us get to be able to guarantee that, and it's not been everybody's experience with.
Well, I think you should guarantee that. You make us put the boat storage in. You put a rule in that it's 1 management or 2 management companies that are approved. And that's what manages this project. They're not self-managed. You put those rules in place and you do guarantee that. These guys, I can't remember how their license is. I tried to get my management company here today. She didn't show, but she must have got just busy. She said she would try and be here. But they're on a strike system where if they get too many calls and they're not addressed, they get their license pulled. This is their business.
Before I came on, when overnight rental was done, it was, if you got the overnight rental in the neighborhood, you got the overnight rental in the neighborhood. Any owner could choose to hire whoever they want. The one thing I've been pushing for, and I think we've got it in the HOA or in the PUD now, is that if you're gonna do a project, the HOA gets to pick who they're gonna have manage it, but it's all done under singular management, because that just keeps down on the calls for the police department. You know, they've got somebody to call, there's some distribution of the rentals, so you don't have neighbors trying to compete with neighbors. And, you know, if this guy's doing something, well, and you've got an owner and different management company next door, problem, and the city deals with it instead of internally. So I think the singular management's been kind of a big deal.
It is, but we don't have the structure in place to dictate to these management companies that, you know, you got a single strike policy or you've got $1,000 fine if you get called out.
No, we don't.
That
But
seems like they've got some.
we don't, but
Licensure.
What was that?
What we do have is we do have them stick to a singular management company, and then the HOA is made up of all the individual owners of those units that have a vested interest in having that run properly. So there's the checks and balances are the neighbors checking and balancing each other.
Yeah, if we're not getting rentals, that management company is getting fired. Plain and simple. It really does. It really does allow the free market to run. But I
Well,
would,
I don't think,
I have a unit up there. I would
just
recommend you
concerns
guys-
about how it's going to age, and that's going to largely to be determined by how it's managed, how it's going to, what
Right.
kind of parties and what kind of calls you have. That would, you could handle that easily by a really good management company, but
Right.
you could also fail miserably.
With a bad one.
Yes.
You know, in
And it's
my
not, and
experience
it's not
with that,
generally the
though-
people who are renting those out that's going to pay the price.
Right.
They're still going to rent it out. It's going to be the neighbors,
residents.
and it's going to be the people who are still in the neighborhood that have those problems. And this is new enough to us that it's kind of frightening to think about this many being put out there.
If one person owned 50 units, I'd have more concern
Right.
than if 50 persons owned one unit, because those 50 people
Check
are
each
gonna,
other.
they're got a lot of loud voices saying, hey, we're not happy and we're not comfortable with the guys that are running it.
Well, again, you don't have control over who buys these or who sells them or who, how,
The dif-
how
the difference is
broad-based
from
that
this
is.
is-
It's,
Well, and
Yeah, but you don't have that with anything. That's what I was
Why
gonna say.
not?
The difference between
So
this
this
and a
is-
hotel is these guys, hotel owners don't usually go and stay in their one room. These are owners that own, this is their second home. When they come down, parties that I understand that we have the concept of, that is in a lower rented, young kids can't afford these rents. That's all there is to it. These are families, like on President's Day weekend, a lot of couples coming down to see the parade of homes. Tons of couples coming down with their kids to play soccer games. That does happen. And that week was the busiest week at the pool. And other than that, it is a too quiet. It's a little creepy that it's that quiet outside. So I think that these guys, they won't see it until it's built out. And I understand that. And there is a lot of assumptions with the nightly rentals. But I've lived in one now for almost a month on purpose to test this out. And President's Day weekend was busy and there was vehicles parked on the road with boats. That's the one thing that it was a great recommendation from Troy and the council, but we do need that.
I just, that area.
Which area are you referring to, Councilwoman?
Uh,
The amenities area?
Nope, all those homes above it.
We put that there to
Oh,
get
up
a
on-
different.
That area,
product.
you've made a lot of, listened to a lot of suggestions regarding that area. And yet it's still, I still don't know where the garbage cans are going to go, and there aren't sidewalks, and it does seem dense for what could be low-income housing, or could be a senior center if you wish. I don't know, but I will tell you, that's an area that I just keep looking at.
Is
Okay.
this area as the nightly rentals?
Not
You're
even
saying, or
nightly rentals, just as
just
an area
as it
at all
is?
for people to live
Councilwoman, I
like.
can
As it
answer
is.
part of that question because I lived in a development just like that. My trash can went to the side of my house and then was pulled to the streets, back to the side of the house.
And there will be room for
And
that
there were
on
no
these houses.
sidewalks in it. We used the roads as our walkways and just having lived in a development just like that.
Was
on
it
the west side
an
of St. George.
attractive, wonderful area that did credit to the city you lived in?
I think so. I'll tell you what, it gave me a great starting point. I lived in it for 13 years and raised my children to a point until I could move forward. I still own it. It's an investment property for me today.
Is it?
No. My View Estates doesn't have sidewalks.
Yeah,
Well,
but
one side
with
does,
your
Main
bad
Street.
hip, I don't know that,
Anyway, not to detract. We
No.
don't need to go.
No,
there,
I
but,
appreciate that. And we,
So-
I thought she
it's
was
just an area I
addressing-
keep looking at. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I thought maybe you were addressing why that was in the nightly rental, and it was to give a different product.
Well, yeah, mixing nightly rental right next to residential too, that could be very interesting.
Yeah.
We have exactly that concern right now.
Right.
Okay, even just more distance, but the same concern. So if we introduce it right there, those homes on the back two lines you're not going to be very happy.
And if you did restrict that, everything on Honey Lane, you have lots of separation from anything right there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I see.
Any other questions?
All righty, thank you. Anybody new that has anything to add?
I'll be real brief. My name is John Cabot. I live in Bella Vista. Last year, the city council approved a 49-unit development on 5 acres out by Staley Farm off 300 East. And it's a great, I went out there and looked at it. It looks like a great development. It's all in one, 49 units. It's just dedicated for
which one?
rentals. I'm not sure the names.
Oh, okay. Hoops.
Yeah, Hope Steel. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, it looks like a very nice development, but I just think they're better off on those kind of units being standalone like that. I think it just makes a lot more sense to have them rather than have an overlay like they're proposing on this.
You're talking the overnight rental portion of
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all.
Great. Thanks, John.
Ready for a motion?
I'll make sure everybody that's had a chance to speak. With that, I'll look to the council for a motion to close our public hearing.
Move closure of this public hearing.
Motion for closure by Councilwoman Granger.
Second.
Second by Councilman Belliston.
Ford, aye.
Huff, aye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Turek, aye. Remind you again that in 2 weeks, we'll take action on this, so we welcome any other input or thoughts that you may have along that.
Well, I feel like I should apologize for my frivolity during the meeting, but it gets long.
It makes it
It's
fun.
a lot of restraint put on me, but I do appreciate the citizens coming and a lot of their input and their discussions and emails. Thank you.
One of my concerns, just to reiterate, we appreciate you speaking and a lot of speaking. We have this little clock here that says allowed 3 minutes and remaining 2:58, and it's been stuck with 2 seconds for, this whole class.
That's because I held the button down up here.
So that being said, we hope that we've been allowing you guys to have more than what's normal for you to speak. It's something really important for us to hear. So thank you very much. And we do talk a lot.
With that, we'll move on to our next item, council. Another public hearing for consideration of granting a general plan amendment G-18-02 to change the land use designation from community commercial CCOM to high density residential HD. The request is located at approximately 1100 East and Telegraph. Applicant Bruce Dickerson.
Thank you. As stated, general plan use map amendment. The request area covers 0.82 acres. As stated, the current designation is the community commercial. The applicant again is seeking for the change to the high density residential. The surrounding general plan land use designations are high density residential to the north and community commercial to the east, south, and west. The surrounding zoning is R3 to the north and RA2 to the west, which is the sod farm, and C1 to the east and to the south. The applicant is wishing to amend this parcel in hopes for a future residential development on this location. The high-density residential designation allows for the R3 zoning designation as an option for a rezone. Staff finds that the request could be appropriate due to the adjoining property to the north, which is already zoned R3. Staff's reservation is the fact that Washington City has been losing designated commercial properties of these types of amendments over the past several years. These commercial areas are a major source of future tax revenues that are sorely needed in our community. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their March 7th meeting. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 3-2, recommended approval for the proposed G-18-01 application to amend the general plan land use map from the community commercial to the high density residential. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you.
Is it the second parcel up or the?
I said
Just
3
the
to
one
2.
parcel, right?
No, you listen. 1801 is the application. It is 02. No, I thought you were saying 3 to 2. This is actually should be 02. I didn't fix that on the one because I've been having math issues tonight. There's no doubt.
Things that you meant to put on.
I need to
things
go back
matter.
to
Right,
take
Bruce,
count.
of the 3 parcels, it's just
It's just this one, and yeah, it's hard to.
Which
I
one?
just
Okay, that one.
that
All
particular one right there, the one that has the 0.82. It's that rectangle. Sorry, it's
If it's bright red, it means that's the parcel. Is that the-
that's well, no, in this case it does.
Parking issues.
Because the other ones don't have it, but it is this piece. I just didn't want to zoom in too much so you can see where it is, but it is just that rectangle piece right there, the WBPCS-3-74.
3-74. Okay.
And that's the 0.82 acres.
Any questions for Mr. Ellerman? If there are none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing concerning this parcel. Anyone here would like to come and speak to that?
Tamara Goodrich. Tamara Goodrich. So the corner that comes, so the piece down below, could there still be a commercial business put there? And
The
then
general
that,
plan, is its general plan today? Yes.
okay. Because I think that we need something commercial there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll bring it back to council to close our public hearing. Motion
Seconded.
by Council Belliston to close, seconded by Councilwoman Granger.
Ward aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis, aye.
Turek, aye.
I just have one quick question for Drew. R3 is 16, 15.
R3 is 13 to 16 dwelling units per acre.
House.
So this one would only, I think I did the math, 12 would be the number on this piece. Would be the max units that would go on, could go on.
So there again, we'll hear that in 2 weeks, that the council will make a decision on that.
Would love to discuss sometime with the council how many high-density units we're moving into this area.
Well, we're doing a lot of high density into the area that doesn't do anything for the city as far as affordable housing as well. I mean, a lot of these are just out of reach. They're not targeted to that niche that is needed.
Second homes, aren't they? Vacation
Yeah,
homes. And,
or vacation rentals or.
well, I think it's a just
Yeah, so much, yeah.
just
I
a
still
note.
want to see what the state's definition on
Yeah.
those, because
Just
they
a
gotta
note.
be accurate. They can't just say that because they're used as vacation, they don't qualify that, because that to me seems.
Well, even if it does
Still
qualify with the
high-density
state, it still
homes.
doesn't get us.
Doesn't use that
yeah.
community.
It doesn't help the community, which
Done
is,
the effort that we should do.
Well, and from my perspective, I just want to avoid, to the extent that we can, as long as.
Agreed.
That's what we're doing, that we're not, because I mean, next year, we came with it that close to us being taxed for it this year.
yeah,
But
Agreed.
by our state legislature, and that's the concern I have, is that we're trying to do the right thing, and then we might get blindsided by it, because.
We build
state
it, but they
legislature-
don't buy it for that, but we build it. I mean, we're not building
I
it, but,
understand.
all right. So just an item to note, let's have a discussion sometime soon.
well, so, I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on the topic, because it's before us now, it's on the agenda, right?
Well, for the public hearing.
Well, I
I
realize
mean, you
that.
certainly can, yeah, I'm not saying you can't discuss it. I'm
Right,
just saying
that's what I'm
public
saying.
hearing portion, so.
Now to be, I mean, it's
Yeah, if you
properly
want to-
listed.
I'll tell you what my thoughts are, is what your staff has recommended. Every one of these general commercial, these community commercial parcels you let a road away, there's another one gone that you never get back. And
Does that mean we can't say that we're for property rights anymore?
you can say whatever you want. All you can just say is someday you're going to have to pay your piper, and how do you generate revenues? You decide. Sales tax or property tax. That's,
Yeah.
you've got both, one of two
Well,
scenarios.
what
to think about.
confuses me is that I always thought commercial property was worth more.
I would've-
Apparently that's,
Well, it may be that commercial, you've only got one parcel, to where if I can sell 16 homes, if I can put 16 houses on that thing and sell them, then maybe it's worth more that way.
well, really, those are the numbers I wonder about. That is the motivation of the developers to change out commercial.
You've got to know that.
Yeah, no, I always thought the landowner could make a great deal more off of a commercial piece of property than.
Well, council, and if I may, I'd be remiss to not maybe invite the applicant is here. Their project might address some of what you guys are looking for.
They decided they wanted to
After our
talk. Well, they
planning.
just can't.
Now
they
I don't
just
know
can't
why.
start talking. They suddenly wanted to talk.
They wanted to get out of the chairs.
Ben's never been quiet before all the years I've known him, so I was actually waiting for footsteps to come.
Oh, that's interesting how we can get him to squeak a little.
I was just letting you have say your piece. I'm good. So we've been sitting around all night waiting to
Could you
get
say
the
your
vocal
name
cords
again for
loosened up
us?
for a minute. Ben Willits. I represent the applicant, Bruce Dickerson. Yeah, we completely understand the discussion here as far as the commercial pieces and losing commercial pieces. The applicant has owned this property for going on, I think, 8 years now. Has tried various different scenarios as far as what to put here. One of the difficult things with this is the size of the parcel, and there's 3 adjacent property owners with commercial who nobody can decide on what they want to do. Now, if you could get all 3 of these property owners together and in a perfect world, make something work there, great. But with 3 separate property owners, you're just never going to see something that size go. And nobody who's coming in.
Never say never.
Okay, in our lifetimes.
I wouldn't even go there. I'd say never even in your lifetime.
What Councilwoman Granger said, yes, commercial is typically more valuable from a land value standpoint. It is. That's why the property owner has tried for years and years and years to make something work here. It's just
the property changed hands from Bristol Park to Dickerson 15.
right. Well, it was part of a different ownership partnership that they've
See,
split
Bristol
up.
Park would be that.
So-
Isn't that the next parcel down?
No, that's what this is, Bristol Park commercial.
Yeah,
Right. So all the
he segmented
BPC
it
you
off.
see is the Bristol Park.
Yeah.
So with
So
that,
it
the
didn't
owner,
piecemeal itself already.
the owner has seen a need in the area, not only here, but on the Wasatch Front for more affordable housing. So the model they have here is to do a little denser unit type, which is more basically a condominium, smaller 950 to 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, single bath units for a truly first-time home buyer. So there's a huge demand here.
So under 100,000?
Under 100? Well, not in this decade, but
Really?
No way.
Wow.
Not anymore. I mean, Councilmember Bells have been
I
talking
can
about
tell
that. I mean,
you, I can
maybe
tell you
10
you heard me refer to mine.
10 years ago, we could have
Okay.
said under 100,000, but now it's under 200,000. If we can get
Okay.
under 200,000,
Now
everybody's-
we're talking affordable housing.
well, relative, yeah. I mean, I moved here, 07, and we called affordable housing under 300,000.
Okay.
So,
I guess that's the term we need to look at.
yeah,
What really
so
is affordable
it's all
housing?
relative, but in reality, we're looking at a mid 150 to 160 range, which there is nothing available for a first-time home buyer that can qualify for a conventional FHA type loan. Again, the developer has done this. They have a track record of doing these up in Utah County, and they've had great success in fitting that niche market. Again, with it adjoining to the Bristol Park townhomes behind, this actually works as a very good location for that. And
What happens to those residences when all of a sudden commercial does pop in? Do we have them show up saying, look, we're residents here. Do you want to put commercial in?
they know the commercials around them. I mean, yeah. I mean, again, honestly, I mean, I'm looking at it from, I remember when I got my first house, I didn't care where it was. I was just happy to get in my first house.
Right.
I mean, honestly, when I came from Northern California where we thought a $500,000 house was cheap. So
Yeah, but 10 minutes after you're in your first house, after your first kid, you start caring a lot.
sure. But at this point, these people are moving on. So,
All
again,
right,
it's getting over that hump of getting into your
Again, you're
first
not
place.
selling us on the project because the properties that people move into and move on and degrade quickly are not necessarily great sales for our city.
No, but the biggest thing I think here is, again, the affordable aspect. There really is no affordable housing projects right now in the county. I mean, there's
So
a
you're
few.
not just going to sell those off and turn them into second homes for
Oh, no. No,
vacationers.
these are primary residents. So they're, well, yeah, I mean, we can't control that. We can't guarantee it. But again, going off track record of who is buying these and their other projects, every one of them are first-time home buyers because they can come in and qualify off the FHA type loans.
And we'll look for recreation areas for the children and sidewalks. And
Yeah, I mean,
stuff,
we,
you know that.
if you want, I can show you our preliminary site plan.
Yeah,
I mean,
we don't need that.
Technically, it's not coming until zone change, but
We don't want to see that.
you know,
It won't even come at zone change. That'll come just
Platting
Yeah, and
process.
we've got all that, factored in. We do have a small, nice little open space area for a little playground area and grass area for kids. It's a pretty simple site.
All right,
plan,
any other questions for the applicant? Okay, if not, we'll move on.
Sorry, Kevin's another
2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Okay.
You got 2 seconds on it.
2 seconds.
Button, you're on 2
Kevin
seconds.
Warner, I've actually worked with the applicant for the last 4 years and actually doing this exact project. And let me just tell you who it will be. It's just some singles, but it'll be couples, young couples, just married, just getting married, no children. And if they have a child that's on the way or less than a year old, and they have, they are beyond happy to have an opportunity to have a chance to get in the market, to have home ownership. This is all we do. I mean, this is a $500 earnest money. They have 2 weeks to do their due diligence. If it's a go, they do another $1,000. So they're into it $1,500. It's not a fee to us. It's the first $1,500. That's where they stay until they close. It's an FHA loan. It's a government loan suited for first-time home buyers that gives them the opportunity to less money down, less credit score requirements. Mom and dad can help with the down payment or even co-sign. And I've got 134 in a unit right now, or a development right now. It's not even been listed. It's only been a sign out in front of the place and a sign on the freeway, and it's right between the freeway and a busy street. They don't care. You mentioned, like, what about if they have a commercial in front? They don't care. All they want is that opportunity.
But front porches into a common area then, I guess, so they can communicate with each other.
Well, this is just a 12-plex. I mean, they're
Yeah.
just gonna,
Single
Yeah.
building, 2 buildings, 6 and 6, or?
it's 3 high, 4 across. And again, council members, I would just like to tell you, you'd be doing a wonderful thing for these people, to give them an opportunity to have what we have, home ownership, and to get in the game, to have have the tax write-off, to have the appreciation. And anyway, I know that you've been here a long time, but I'm pretty passionate about it. They are that excited to be able to get in a home, and I really enjoy doing that.
Okay, thank you.
You don't have any LA Times articles we could read about that, do you?
All right,
Thank you.
council, we'll,
Inside joke.
yeah, well,
Stick around, you might appreciate it.
there again, we'll make that decision in 2 weeks. So we'll move on over to item number 9, change order. Consideration to grant a change order for the Grapevine booster pump. Mike Shaw.
I don't know why Denise hates me so bad, put me on last all the time.
Why do they put you last all the time? Mike?
Jeez. Mike, you're that
Council,
trustworthy.
Public Works is asking for to add a change order to our water project. Currently, we're building our 2 million gallon water tank and pipeline connecting it over to the Green Springs area. One of the issues we have is being the ability to get water to that tank from our treatment plant. So where this tank project came in so far under budget, we started looking at adding this pump station in, which would go up here by our Grapevine tank. We'd be able to take the water from our treatment plant, boost it up, and get it over to our tank and be able to keep those tanks over on this side of town filled with water from our treatment plant, which is considerably less than what we're planning for water from the regional water supply agreement. So, what we are trying to do is maximize our water before we, have to purchase water from the district.
I love what you're doing.
So with this, you had in your packet the engineer's estimate, and the estimate was at $183,500. We believe will come in under that, so we'd like to get approval to proceed with not to exceed the $183,500. We'd be using the contractors that are on our project right now and just change ordering that and basing their pricing off of their line item bids that's on our project now.
So is the reality of this that we're not really saving the city money, but we'll save the citizens money by not needing to increase as we use water
Correct.
as quickly. Okay.
Any other questions?
So walk me through the change though, because we didn't plan on this originally. I'm just walking me through where
Well, we've had it in our planning. We knew we had an issue with getting the water over to the tank. But we're just kind of watching our dollars. We figured the tank project was going to come in at around a $2 million project. It came in at a $1,459,000 project. So that gave us some money extra, and that's when we thought, well, we've got the extra funding there that we had budgeted for in this year's project, and we go ahead and maybe try to get this built
So
into
it's
this.
the money that really pushed up the schedule, not necessarily changed the plan.
Correct. And it's money we had in our budget. It's not borrowed money. It's
You're still well under budget.
and we're still well under budget with this
Which I
project.
think is awesome.
And it also fixes another issue we have that's up at our tank right now. We have a chlorinator building. All of our electrical radio equipment repeaters are in there. Not a good scenario to have electrical equipment with chlorine. So we'll be moving all that electrical equipment over in this building, and they'll have a separate room for all of our radios and our repeaters.
Great. Any other discussion?
Well,
Mr.
just
Shaw?
after visiting your water treatment facilities and what you have put into place for our city to help us be more cost efficient, I really appreciate these things that are foresight rather than reactionary. So considering where we're at within the budget, I think this is a very wise move. So I would
With
like
that,
to make a
let's-
motion.
Yeah, bring us a motion.
All right. With that, I'd like to make a motion to grant the change order for the Grapevine booster pump
In the amount.
in the amount of, dang
Not
it,
not to exceed.
and not to exceed, just barely close,
83,500.
183,500.
A motion by Councilman Clough, well put.
Dang it.
Seconded by Councilwoman Granger. Turek, aye. I'll start on this side.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Clough eye.
Ward eye.
Thank you.
Man, all excited. It was a short one, but it wasn't. Dang it. I'm trying again.
All righty. We'll move on to item 10. The mayor has asked me to, he has asked for, or he is appointing Roger Meekum to the Power Board and has asked for the council's consideration to confirm that appointment. Wow. Mr. Meekum lives up on Bullock Street, a longtime resident of our community. I think he's still employed by the Spectrum.
No, he retired.
Oh, did he? So he's earned his wings and he's retired now.
I've heard he is all retired
But
now.
Roger, I've known for several years, and to me, I think it's a great appointment.
I'd be happy to support Roger.
So I'll look for a-
Are we down a body there? Or?
Yes. Yeah, we had a couple of them resign and move and whatnot. So we've been in need.
Have
for
one of them
replacement.
get elected.
Yeah.
And I can't even make
And this is the seat nobody wanted.
So they just removed it. They just chopped it off. Don't even repoint.
So we'll look for a motion for that.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll motion that we confirm the appointment of Roger Meekum to the Power Board.
Okay, a motion for approval by Councilman Belliston,
Second.
second by Councilman Ward.
Ward eye.
Clough eye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. Thank you. Item 11, report of officers from assigned committees. Any officers, anybody have an assigned committee they'd like to report on?
I've been active with the HCAC a little bit. I just want you to know. Their proposal is of all this land that's actually in the Tortoise Reserve, that's private land, that Brennan Holdings and Jim Rand, they own some, close to 400 acres, I think, in the proposal. 600 maybe, is that they donate 90% of that if the BLM, et cetera, can find enough money to buy the 10%. And additional money to pay for the taxes supposedly owned on property that they can't use, which is about $1 million.
It's an ongoing dispute, I think, is the underlying basis of that.
The recent thing is, and I've continued to stand up and testify about two things. One is a road that needs to consider the human habitat and go up higher. But the other thing has been interest in perhaps creating some recreational access into that property, and that Brennan, tax-wise, is going to be greatly advantaged by donating these parcels, this 90%, to various entities. And he has announced at this last meeting, Jim did, that we will be the recipient of one of that, which gives us an opportunity not to make money off of it, but to trade it for the space on the trails that we otherwise couldn't get.
Mitigate
because you
those
have to-
trails.
Okay, so that's my little plot, and so far, you know, he did announce that publicly, that we would be getting some of that land, and then you see, not that we can use it any other way except to make the habitat whole, but we may well be able to do that in a way that trades for some parking and trail areas.
No, that's great, because you remember when we talked about that, they said, well, the way that you could build trails is you'd have to mitigate it with.
That's the thing, you
Yeah.
can't, you have to take one out if you put one in.
Exactly.
Well, we're putting in
Yeah, we're
big
putting in
parcel,
this.
so why not
We'll take the
get
trails
into
out.
the trails?
Good
So just,
Good
that's,
thinking.
Was that
that's,
from Tuesday's meeting, Council Granger?
that was yesterday's,
Yeah, yes, Tuesday.
yeah, Tuesdays,
I actually,
Tuesdays at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
I actually met with both of them this morning and they reiterated that desire. So they were actually quite excited about it. So
Well, and Brandon was joking about, there's two other players in these big holdings that they're trying to get that land taken care of, and they've had a struggle to do so. So he was murmuring about, naming something after him, and I was sitting right behind him, and I said, how about the Brandon Trails? Yeah, how about the Brandon Trails?
Did Brennan come or was it just Jim? Did Brennan, was
he's
Brennan?
They were
he's
both,
down here this week.
they're both there.
Interesting, great.
They're having the
Well, that's-
hearings tonight, the open house. And I'm
Yeah,
sorry
I don't
for the
know.
expansion.
Yeah, I don't know the extent of it, but Senator or Representative Stewart's representative down here reported to us at the MPO that there was part of the omnibus bill that passed had funds to purchase those
Well,
properties.
3
And I don't
million
know-
just became available, and BLM has 2.4 million, but they need somewhere close to 8 or 10 million to make this work.
And I didn't know what portion of that, because he just said that there's part of the omnibus. Of course, the bill hadn't passed at that
Well,
point. It was
their
on the
next step
table.
is they're gonna build a plan that shows the steps of beginning to get that money and how much property they may turn over and how they'll do it. And I'm sure part of it is the advantage of taxes if it's done right to Mr. Brannon, but it's kind of fun.
So where does he get a benefit from it to donating it to
Well,
us?
he can't,
just
he
gets out
doesn't
of the
get any
taxes.
money right now for that at all. He can't find any reasonable trades because it's a tape area.
Mhm.
So he'll get $8 to $10 million that he doesn't have, and it will be, he's in his 70s. He wants it off his plate. He does not want to continue to worry about this issue.
Yeah, and the county's got to be somehow deeply involved in this, because that's where the money is.
They are.
That's where a lot of that money goes, is the county property tax.
And we're supposed to see a resolution our
This
next
is-
meeting
no,
to
we're
try and.
Still years, but this resolution coming up that they want us to approve, I hope we'll rewrite portions of that to indicate that we want as equal a consideration for the human habitat as for the tortoise habitat, and that road needs to be moved up higher. If I were those people, and I'll just say this, if my home were sitting there in a habitat that's been promised to be eternal almost, and that road went right behind my home, I'd sue.
What, maybe I missed that as part of your announcement. What resolution?
So I'm just saying.
There's a resolution coming.
They want
The
us to sign
counties-
the resolution. and-
County's asking us.
They emailed it to us. Habitat, we county, so.
Yeah, so I think our resolution,
Last year, so.
No, this is a new
That
one.
was
They
a
want it.
range, I think, okay.
see, I think our resolution needs language in it about distance from human habitat.
Denise, did you have a comment
And
about that?
trail
She's done it.
and trail systems. Let's mention both of them in our ordinance, because
Yeah,
that's Washington
think
City,
that's
and we need to take care of. I don't think we'll get anywhere opposing the Northern Corridor in this public environment. I just don't think that's probably gonna make any difference at all, but if we can promote, still get that away from the human habitat, get away from the possibility of lawsuits by those people, I have every reason to expect that that would never go into a road. Okay? Because there's been no road ever approved, even though it's been on maps for years. I know it's never been approved.
That's how we get them. We put them on maps and someday they come to fruition.
Well, so they bought with a reasonable expectation that they're right next to that open area. And if I were them, I'd form a coalition and sue. I would. And I think we can avoid that if we'll do a little bit more mitigation with that space. I don't think we need to get into that. But I think our ordinance ought to represent what we as a council feel about that and about the trails. So.
I don't think you should so easily give up on the Colleen Granger trailhead or the Colleen Granger.
No, I'll be dead. I love it. We'll just name it the Brennan Trail.
Well, then your grandkids get to hear it.
Any other reports?
Thank you.
We can have that discussion at that.
Well, my fear is it's going to be while I'm gone. I'll be gone the 5th through the 14th.
But that'll be a discussion at the workshop, not necessarily a vote.
Yeah, workshops are always discussions.
I know that their timeline is they would like within months to get these resolutions in, but this has gone for many years.
Yeah.
There's some desire to resolve.
Any inkling of how, if the property will be sufficient for a trade parcel to actually accomplish what you're looking for?
Well, no, because we've not had that discussion
Right.
about what's happening now as the trail people from the county and the HCAC and Barry are meeting to try to show exactly what those trails would be and to approximate what the amount is. And if we can approximate what the amount of acreage needed is, then I think the intent is to present that to Brennan and have him deed that material.
At least, yeah, that might help
They've
us.
already got a trailhead off Snow Canyon Park.
They've got some trailheads, they don't have decent parkings and they don't have enough.
Couldn't make sure they could do additional was off the new section.
It's getting up into Big Hollow and Mill Hollow and some of those areas.
It's really pretty.
Any other reports from council members, committee reports? If not, we'll move to our city manager report.
So, this is the control room at the Buckway substation.
Irritate cell.
We are gonna
There's my
paint,
blue building.
we are gonna paint.
Yes, you see, we still painted the substation.
So it disappears, okay.
You won't even see it after the place. That's the way these things are. They're problems until it's get used to. Less work going in. They're hoping to start power up. They'll look at energizing maybe about mid-April. There'll still be some work in there. They can do some energization and also still do some work. I thought I'd take a picture of this. So this was up.
That up at the tank?
Dinosaur tracks up there.
So this is the tank. I wanted to point out. Actually, if you look down there, I can't point the road out. You got Washington Parkway actually open into all that development right down there. But you got, this is some area that Councilman was talking about. This is road, this is really more than from the tank. I'll show you a picture. There's another picture kind of moving down a little bit, looking more to the south. This is the tank. This is massive. This is just, it's kind of fun to stand there and look at the size of this. Mike, can we end up with 50 cement trucks? Something like that. 500 yards. 500 yards.
What feeds that tank?
Oh, we just catch rain.
Is this the wash?
long enough on the council and they start to just really see.
I see the swimming pool. I always wished it would be on that side.
Very nice there. It's a little further back, so you kind of see a little bit of dimension there. It's still not good. It's changed a little. Okay, I jump over here to give you an update on the park. There's park. This is right on the bathrooms. They're in good shape. I think we're going to be in pretty darn good shape for Coffee Days where we're at right now. Most of that soccer is almost done. If they're not done today, they'll be done by tomorrow.
A quick thing for you on that. Are the area that's proposed for a splash pad in the future, are we just going to concrete that for now and grass it, or just grass that whole area?
It'll be concrete.
It is.
Yeah, but all the pipes and water are in there. We'll have lights in there, so it's still going to be used for some.
So the splash pad is part of this part. This.
No, it's wired and plugged.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's the thing I was curious.
But there's no balls, there's no pumps, there's no, that lights. But it's, so if you saw the big trench, you maybe see the big trench
Going
on
along.
that north side, that was for power, and also some water lines going in that direction as well. But I'm actually glad we're kind of moving that. Initially, the splash pad is going to be in the place that playground. Because that playground needs some, but we need to address it down the road too, and the insurance company would like us to do that. But I didn't like it. I mean, the splash pad to me out on Telegraph is just, I think you're going to have.
I like it tucked back in
Mothers that are
more.
going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have people uncomfortable sitting there. You get traffic kind of sitting there looking at them.
I'll tell you, my personal opinion is splash pads as a whole is a liability that I would just soon as start to go away from splash.
Well, my feelings about splash pad are not too different than that. I think here's the issue with this one, and this has been raised by individuals, so I get it. I'm of the feeling too that I would not like to see something different than a splash pad in the community. Now, what we're hearing though from the downtown is the downtown is felt a bit neglected. We put these splash pads in all over the place. And
This is the argument I would have with that, and I guess I get a little heartburn hearing that this splash pad's still being discussed, because I've heard from a lot of this council said, okay, we're willing to talk this piece, but this piece we're not talking about that yet. So all of a sudden here, oh, we're plumbing for that. It's like time out here.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way because I still haven't seen renderings and
Well, part of
still
what I
haven't
think
seen
we
this.
could do, especially in the downtown, we could do something with a nice little, like St. George City's done with their downtown river runs through it.
Streams. Oh, yeah.
That really enhances the area. We get away from the splash pad to give the water for the kids to play in and to do their thing like a splash pad does, but really adds and enhances the whole
Well, if you
beauty of it. all.
remember the extended plan, that's that. Extended plan takes.
Well, had one coming off the other
Yeah,
side,
but
but
right now, that's again also because
Correct.
we have other council members that say, well, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
So, but was part of the original plan to have kind of what we have like in a Nison's Park, kind of that irrigation trail type of thing. It may not even be the actual irrigation, it may just be simulated irrigation.
Correct.
But that was part of that as well.
I just know that one of the things we have in our current splash pads is a lot of maintenance
And hornets.
and hornets.
True.
And half of the year, they're not functionable.
But the concept of available water.
Well, water and kids,
In a place with our temperature.
I would say water needs to be a part of the component.
very
I just think there's a
popular.
different
Yeah,
way to.
that one at St.
do
George
it.
is
Different
very
component.
popular.
So without completely discrediting the splash pads, because they're very popular.
No, I'm not saying.
But I would agree with the fact.
I
that-
never use them.
I don't, and we're agree. This is our barbecue place. So you can see they're forming up there. I should have got a better picture to show.
This here's the skateboard ramp.
No, I think that's,
Oh, yeah.
no, that's,
We're gonna wrap.
that's the truck that allows us to.
I'm
pen
just
for gold.
saying, that's
our
something
gold
to
standard.
help us.
So it's hopping on top of that, they're reaching up, they're
What did
doing the
Councilman
handovers
Graves
through the gazebo.
Yeah, so.
We'll find the weaknesses real quick.
Yeah. So, okay, let me move on to the next part. This now.
Let's see, what can we get on this one?
Yeah, is the pavilion. Go ahead, I'll wait a minute.
I like the
Crash
pavilion.
through it. I'll tell you, that's one solid structure.
It is really cool. Went and
That
walked
is one
through it.
solid structure.
Amazing.
I'll tell you. That's not blowing off anywhere. They're finishing up the brickwork you can see around those posts, which make it.
Yeah, that's nice.
We'll actually have through that park, there's a little back, further back. One of the things that's nice in the plans of the park, it's not in this plan, but what will be nice in the park is we will be kind of smattering, not in the park per se, because we don't want to lose functionality, but you'll start to see what I hope. So for instance, let me go back to, yeah, there's some do it, but let me go back over near the splash pad if I could.
Let's call it the lazy river.
Yeah, let's just call it Patterson.
The lazy river.
Okay, let's go back to the Patterson.
The hard surface.
Let's just go back to the pad of cement, and when Councilman Turk doesn't know what's under the cement, won't hurt.
That's right. Just some irrigation pipes.
I got concerned a little bit about lighting over there because we have decorative lighting on the building. So it'll be nice looking, but it won't broadcast. And then we do have a light on the inside side, so the right side, you can't see that. So it didn't appear that we were going to get enough light over that area. They've since switched that a little bit. Floodlights were a problem too because they'd be about eye level. So floodlights are just, people sit there and look at them. We will have a small floodlight off this bathroom, not off the gazebo. We'll keep it to the decorative light. But we'll have, I don't know if it's in this, I don't think it's in this part of the, oh, maybe, I can't remember, but we'll have some, the plan eventually is to string some of the ornamental lights throughout the park, not in the park, but kind of throughout the park to make it, and they'll put one here and that'll become the light for that big cement pad. So, anyway, that's all I have. I just wanted to show you a couple of those things. Only two other things that I would mention is we're finished with the project on Telegraph, the OPGW, the static line on top of what was the restricted lanes. This last week was getting that finished, so that project is done.
No more cones on Telegraph and 300.
Not for that project.
Okay.
And guaranteed for not any others. We just got to do this lights and that now. That'll be down the road there. And then these sent out to each of you, and I can't remember the date off. You'll know what I'm talking about. We have the UX Municipal Toolkit. I know historically those should have gone, no, the UX. Those who've gone before Councilwoman Granger, there's no need, this is the same thing. Councilman Ward, if you can make it work, that might be a great one too. I know Councilman Clough has had experience there. But this is very much a 101 with the UAPS organization upline. Yeah, it's here in St. George. It's the one
Down here.
What alarm's going on?
It's the crickets in the ceiling, I think. Sounds like a swarm.
No alarm going on.
There's
Can
alarm
everybody hear that?
That's the air.
HVAC.
I can't hear that.
Frogs. It's the frogs.
The frog sure sounds like an
The
alarm.
frogs.
No. That's all I have.
What was the date on that
Okay.
again? I can't hear that.
If that's it, we'll look for item 13. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
What was the date on the UAMS thing?
That's
That's fine. I'll find it. Let's adjourn. That's a long meeting.
So moved.
So move motion by Councilman
Second.
Bellis, second from Councilman Clough. By everybody said aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now.
We're actually setting marketing practice every single business that's on factory. I'll go stick with it.
Oh, my.
And this will. I still don't. It's still gonna be what? No, if the mayor was here, it's fine. I'm not worried about it. After I got able to get a little bit more helps. I mean, it helps to say, yeah, we're not trying to. I get it. I'm not too worried about it. But
Well, that's what that was about.
hey,
Is
I'm
my
just.
perception, no matter what we did, that was what's going to happen.
No problem.
Do you have any almond joys you would trade for? No, you can't have that. Wait. For do you have any almond? What do you have? I used to do this with my kids after Halloween. Switch my leftover candy. I got all the almond joys. It was a heck of a deal. Yeah. Get an almond joy ice cream.